All right, ETM Hotel. Welcome to the Seshu Ma'ani Meronecha YouTube channel. Today is our Freestyle Friday session. Every Friday we have a freestyle session, and we've been accustomed to doing transliterations and translations freestyle, basically coming from memory without the help of any books, be it the sign list or the dictionaries. We've been taking different pictures submitted by various different people or ones that we find online, and going through the pictures and translating the text. All right. And by doing so, we show and emphasize what we call tepesip, which is the correct method on transliterating translation. All right. There's a scientific method in doing so that everybody follows, whether you're a novice, beginner, or an expert. We all follow this same procedure. How proficient, how fast we do it, the difference there is it depends on, your level of practice and proficiency. All right. So, but like I said, Freestyle Friday is a complete freestyle night on Fridays where, we have open discussions. We do the transliteration translations, address different claims that's floating around in the social community as it relates to ancient Kemet and its specifically its language and culture. So tonight is no different. So we want to open it up, and we have an open discussion. But before doing so, we always like to recite the offering formula. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Sonnet Emiket.
Dua. So hopefully you have it locked on my screen. So for those who are watching and would like to recite the offering formula, what it is that you're seeing on your screen, that is the offering formula, and just quickly go over it. On the top section, that's what we have, which is the hieroglyphs. And then on the middle part, that is the transliteration, and the bottom part, that's the translation. So what I'm going to be reading or reciting is the transliteration bit, and feel free to recite it along with me. And the offering formula, this one is dedicated to the ancestors, which is written over here as Aku. And it is here as well, but you can insert the name of anybody that you'd like to be part of the offering formula in this section. So feel free to go ahead and recite it along with me. Hotep Tinesu, Weser, Nepjetu, Netra Nep Abju, TF Peret Keru, T Henket, Ka Aped, Ches Menchet, Het Nebet, Neferet, Wabet, Anket, Necha Im, Inkani Imaku, Aku, Ma Kiru. And what he says is, an offering the king gives Osiris, Lord of Jadu, great God, Lord of Abydos, so that he may give verbal offerings in beer, bread, ox, fowl, alabaster, and linen, everything good and pure on which a God lives, for the car of the revered ones, the ancestors, justified. Yes, and I'll pass the microphone back to Yoja.
All right, to you, Iker and Dua, for that. All right, so that's how we always like to start things off, with the offering formula. And we've actually gone through the offering formula in more detail in a specific hangout in our archive. So if anyone's interested, just browse through our archives and check it out. All right, so I'll introduce myself, Reni Wujau, or Wujau Meneb Irimaat, or just Wujau is fine. And we also have other members on the panel. So I don't know if you all want to just unmute yourself, introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll just get going.
ETM Hotel, Benny Jehudi Ma'at, checking in for the Freestyle Friday. Hotep a bit. Hope you enjoy it.
All right, next up.
ETM Hotel, welcome and peace, everybody. It's your brother June. Just want to say I hope you guys enjoy the show and leave with satisfaction. Hotep.
Hotep, Reni Imiket, and welcome to our Freestyle Fridays. Hotep.
ETM Hotel, welcome to Freestyle Friday. Rennie Sean. Dua for tuning in.
All right. Nice flow there. All right, so tonight will probably be brief, a little shorter than what we normally do because kind of get long-winded. I'm definitely guilty of that. MC Iron Lung comes out every now and then. Well, not every now and then, probably all the time. But this time won't be like that. So let's just open the floor up. So tonight is open discussion, freestyle, completely freestyle, not just freestyle on translations, but completely freestyle. So I really didn't have any pre-planned topic to discuss. Just a couple of things. I know I'm glad people have been safe after the episodes of the various different hurricanes that have hit the southeast of the states and everything, myself included. We caught a little bit of it, and not anything direct, but the winds knock down trees and trees knock out power lines and things like that. So myself, I was caught without power for I think 2 days without power, without internet, things like that. So just glad everybody's hopefully everybody's safe and everything's been restored for everybody and things like that. So that's pretty much occupied the week. And so when I did get internet access again and was able to check things out on social media and everything, I just, get caught up on the latest news and things of what people are saying, what people have been sharing and things like that. And so today I kind of, browsed around a bit and I saw a few things being discussed about Egypt. I did see a little bit of the video where a Nuwapian brother and brother Jabari and Prince York actually were having a discussion. And, obviously they were talking about elements of ancient Egypt or Kemet, the language and things like that. So I listened in for a little bit of that. And I think that the brother Jabari is doing a good job at, putting up a contest to anything that's being, any misinformation is being said. I should put it that way. And, so I think he's doing a good job at doing that. And there was quite a bit of that going on. A lot of misinformation floats around pretty much on a regular, but specifically dealing with ancient Egypt and things. I see that a lot. And so definitely want to tip my hat to Jabari for addressing some of those things in the best ways that he can. I think there's a lot more to be done. And I also think that some of the things that are said, it has to be organized. The information has to be organized in a way that we don't get caught up like we're already caught up. I always see this as well, where we're repeating ourselves over and over and over and over and over again. And by doing that, we just become stagnant. We're just stuck. And that's one of my things that I'm fearful of for us as a whole, is that we've gotten comfortable of being stuck in talking about the same things over and over again when they've already been addressed. And so some people may not know that certain issues have already been addressed. And some people do know that they've been addressed, but they just don't put the time in to wrap their minds around it or study it or to understand it. So they just keep bringing up counter arguments or the same old claims over and over and over again. But the best we can do is just organize the truth and make it available to people. So I think that this is something that we all need to participate in organizing the truth. And then that will cut down on the need for some of the things that I've been seeing. Like today, I saw the video where, like I said, the brother Jabari is having a conversation with the Nuwapian brother, Prince York, about issues that really have been covered already. And I saw some people in the chat that were talking about the Medu Neter or Sesh Medu Neter or the hieroglyphs not being deciphered and things like that. So all we could do is our best. that subject shouldn't come up. Anytime that subject comes up, all people have to do is point those people who are saying that or asking that question, point them to the information. That's it. And then we can keep it moving. And so when I was watching, I noticed that was taking place. So I was pointing people to the information. We, the Seshu Mahdi Medu Neter, we wrote a book addressing whether or not the hieroglyphs have been deciphered or not. We've done it in writing, in an organized way. We organized the information, put it in writing. And so therefore, people who raise that question or want to rehash that issue again and again and again, just point to the material. And so this is something that we have to get into a custom of doing, pointing people out to that material. So that's what I did today, a little bit of time that I spent watching that video. But actually, we need more people doing that. You know, I don't know if people don't know, or, you know, because see, when we wrote this book, has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams. It was during the peak of the arguments of actually leading up to a debate that was supposed to take place. I never called it a debate, but that's what it was being called, a debate, with Sarah Sudenseti and young Pharaoh. They were the ones who were, you know, newly Johnny-come-latelys jumping on the bandwagon, saying or claiming that the hieroglyphs have not been deciphered. And it's a very old claim that has been settled and refuted over 150 years ago. And no one argues that. No one who actually studies the language argues that at all. None. And so the only people that would even remotely bring that up are people who don't study the language, never have studied the language, and most likely don't even intend on studying the language. I say that because I've actually offered myself personally, I've offered to teach young Pharaoh a beginner's level course for free. And he turned it down, which is proof positive that the brother had no intention on learning, at least not from me or free. And based on the claims that was constantly being made, he never even attempted to learn on his own whatsoever. So it's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, we just got to keep at it. And so this is what I'm seeing. And so all I'm saying, I'm saying that we have to keep up and organize the truth. That way we don't have to keep rehashing these same old stories, same old claims with the same old people, you know, and we can't cater to the audience like that, who wants to see a fight take place. It kind of reminds me of the movies that you watch when the Roman gladiators are, or you know, either the Romans or the Greek fighters or gladiators. They're in the arena, either in Rome or Greece. I forget which one of the two, or both. And you know, they're fighting, and then the crowd cheers on, and they want to see a fight. That's all the crowd wants to see. They just want to see some blood. They want to see somebody's head taken off. They want to see some limbs, you know, somebody just get killed, beat up and killed, you know. And so the crowd cheers that kind of stuff on. And then whoever's administrating the fight and everything, they cater to that because that's what the people want to see. And so we find ourselves caught up into that, where you have people who are putting it out there that they want to see these kinds of arguments back and forth, but for what? You know, are we reducing ourselves to that level, to where we just want to see people argue for the sake of arguing, even if the arguments are old and stale and have no merit anymore, have been settled decades ago, centuries ago, you know, like the hieroglyphs? It's 150 years ago that's been settled. Not only has it been deciphered, but we're able to read, understand, dissect, analyze, explain, describe all kinds of elements in the language, you know. And we here, Seshu Mahdi Medu Neter, on our channel, we do it all the time, you know. So it's really no thing. And we've only been doing it at a beginner's level for the audience and things, so that people can can take time out to study and get a really good, solid, thick foundation in place before moving, forward and advancing. But, in 2018, that's going to change. So we're going to march people into a deeper understanding, deeper levels of the language and things. All right. So, but anyway, that's what I just want to kind of open up with, just what I saw lately. And that was basically today. I had a chance to witness that conversation, and some things stood out. Like, for example, I'll kick it off with some of the things I heard on the conversation. The brother Prince York said that, well, the brother Jabari took issue that Prince York was still using the word Egypt. That was one of the things he took issue with. He was still using the word Egypt within the platform of the House of Consciousness, Sonata TV. And that platform, everybody is pretty much familiar with the word Kemet. I mean, they had Kemet on trial, part 1, part 2, probably a part 3 coming down the pipe, whatever the case is. But people on that platform are very, very familiar with the word Kemet. So the brother Jabari took issue with Prince York using the word Egypt, keeping using the word Egypt. And so one of the things that he said was that, and I know this to be true from the Nuwapian organization, that they teach that the word Kemet comes from Hebrew, the word Cham, which means hot or black and things like that. And that's just totally false. And Brother Jabari did address that, briefly, and basically just put it out there that that's just completely false. It predates that, and it just doesn't come from that word at all. So that's one thing that stood out. Another thing, when the brother Prince York referred to Egypt as Ptah Meye Reye, as a rendition of the word Ta Mary. And I don't remember if Brother Jabari addressed that, but I heard that in the video. And that too is completely false. The land that we know, popularly known as ancient Egypt, was called Kemet as an entire kingdom, and that didn't start until the 11th dynasty. The word Kemet itself existed way prior to the 11th dynasty, but the kingdom being called or referred to as Kemet as a state apparatus or polity, kingdom, empire, wasn't until the 11th dynasty. So Kemet is one of the names of the kingdom. Ta Meri is another name for the kingdom. Tawi is another name, and that basically was shortened to just Tawi or Tawi for the word two lands. And so those are the three main things that it was known as. And it was known as a couple of other names. It was known as the home or the interior, which is Kenu. It was also known as that at different times before as well. But the most popular was Kemet, all right, and Tawi. Actually, you'll see Tawi used more so in the titulary, the king's titulary, when you see Neb Tawi, Neb meaning owner, possessor, lord, and the word Tawi, two lands. So the kings in their royal titulary, one of the epithets of the king, or several kings, was Neb Tawi, lord of the two lands, possessor, owner of the two lands. All right. So people who need confirmation, they can just look up any of the royal titularies, look up several of them, and you'll see them in several of them. So that was one thing that stood out. And then the claims about Napata and Nakata kind of being mushed and mixed together. Brother Jabari did address that. So, he addressed that briefly as well. So, and then, on the conversation, my understanding is that based on what the brother Jabari said, that he didn't intend for it to be like a back and forth or a debate. He just wanted to have a conversation with the Nuwapian brother Prince York. but Prince York wanted to turn it into a back and forth or question and answer type of thing. And I understand that, because that's the only way that Nuwapians really communicate, because that's their platform, that's their structure and style, is question and answer. So that's the only way they can, kind of interface with others, is question and answer. For the most part. And so that's what that turned into. And it was just a lot of misinformation. But if we just slow down and take our time and study and learn, I think a lot of the things that hold us back will, disappear eventually. We do need to have these discussions. We do need to have healthy debates, because people's research and evidence may not be shared by everyone. So you may have some evidence, another person may have a different set of data and evidence. And if you come to your conclusions based on your access to your portion of that evidence, then you may differ. And then once you come together and have a discussion, then you'll be able to put the evidence together, and then you'll help each other out. And during that process, debates will ensue. Healthy debates, that is, healthy arguments, healthy debates, and things like that. That's how knowledge is grown. So debates, it can be healthy, but not a lot of the ones that we've been seeing. So just wanted to kind of open up with that. So that's just what I've been witnessing lately. So with that, I'll just pass the mic. If anybody else, has something to bring up, maybe we can all address that.
I caught a little bit of their conversation and some things I was seeing in the chat. We've touched on before, but maybe right now would be a good time to bring it up. Like you were saying, Kemet would be a more accurate term to use instead of Egypt. A lot of people are familiar with it. There are other terms too that people should get familiar with if they aren't already, such as Sesh Medu Necher. That's actually the writing script, because I see people talking about, I'd love to see someone talking in Medu Necher. You know what I'm saying? It's inaccurate. The spoken language was referred to as Rani Kemet. The script was referred to as Sesh Medu Necher. And what was the third one? There was another term that got brought up. I can't think of it right now, but I just wanted to bring those forward. Hopefully people get familiar with them if they aren't already, and maybe start using them.
Yeah. I think the other term you would think about was the actual word for Egyptians themselves, remage.
Right.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I was stressing, because if we're gonna have an issue with using the word Egypt all the time, then we have to swap out all the words. And this is what I always talk about as a paradigm shift. We need a full paradigm shift. You can't cherry pick things, because that's not how systems work. And I always give this example. You cannot take a Honda engine out of a Honda Accord and put it into a Mercedes Benz and expect the Mercedes Benz to work. You can't do it, because they're closed systems. Like all the parts that are on or in the Mercedes Benz car is made for the Mercedes Benz. And then you also have generic parts that are made to fit in the Mercedes Benz. But the point is that parts that are made for Toyota, like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord or a Nissan Maxima, whatever the case is, those parts are made for those cars. You can't take that part and put it in a Mercedes Benz and expect it to work. So we can't cherry pick these things. And so this is what people have to keep in mind, especially when trying to find yourself in a spiritual system. A lot of people are practicing yoga, which is a very good practice. It has a whole lot of benefits. The problem with that is when people try to take yoga and make it Egyptian or Kemetic, and then say that they're practicing Kemetic yoga, as if what they're practicing as yoga was practiced that way in ancient Kemet. And so there's nothing wrong with yoga. There's nothing wrong with practicing. Matter of fact, like I said, there's a lot of benefits with yoga. But it becomes a problem when you try to mix these systems up. That's like taking Bazi astrology from China, or feng shui, or what's another thing that's used? Qigong in China. All those are Chinese systems, and then trying to bring it over to Africa and say, hey, I'm practicing Kemetic Bazi, or Kemetic feng shui, or Kemetic this, or Kemetic that. So we have to be mindful not to do that. So likewise, the same thing with these terms and everything. So if we're going to have an issue with one term, then we should take our time and learn, to swap all of these other terms. So the Egyptians themselves, the people of ancient Egypt, indigenously called themselves Remich, which means the people. And it has a cosmological connection, cosmogonical connection, and it comes from the deity that was called Remi, which is from a word which means to cry, and as a noun it means the tears itself. So the Egyptians, or the Remich themselves, saw themselves connected to this particular phenomenon that they describe as from the tears of a deity. This particular deity would be Ra, the tears of Ra. So they would literally be, not literally, I won't say that, but I should say figuratively, they are people of the sun. People want to talk about people of the sun and all this and that. Well, the term Remich captures that essentially people of the sun, from the tears of Ra. That's one. And then, so that's the one that you were thinking of. And then, like I said, Kemet, instead of saying Egypt, instead of saying Kemetic, this is something that I addressed inside the beginner's book as well. Instead of saying Kemetic, which is an adjectival way of trying to describe something, we would say Kemeti. That would be the indigenous way of saying that. Kemeti. That's the adjective, Kemeti. So if I want to say a Kemetic statue, I don't have to say Kemetic, the Kemetic, the ick on there. I would just simply say Kemeti, the Kemeti statue. If I want to, get closer to using these proper terms, Kemeti would be the equivalent of Kemetic. And instead of saying Egyptian, if I'm going to say Egyptian statue, or let's go to the Egyptian museum, or let's go, describing this text as an Egyptian text, I would say Ni Kemet. And Ni Kemet simply means belonging to Kemet, because the IAN suffix on Egypt, to say Egyptian, is to show ownership or belonging to something. So if I say this is an Egyptian book, I'm saying this book has its origins in Egypt. So the equivalent indigenous term would be to say Ni Kemet, and Ni meaning belonging to, and Kemet, the kingdom. So belonging to Kemet. So you say Ni Kemet. And like you already said, the spoken language itself is called Ra Ni Kemet. Ni Kemet is in that word as well, belonging to Kemet. What is Ra? Ra means mouth. And the mouth is associated with language, that which comes out of the mouth, which is the spoken word. All right. So Ra Ni Kemet is the name of the spoken language. Sesh Medu Netre, as you said, also, Sesh Medu Netre is the name of what they're calling hieroglyphs. So in this day and time, 2017, we no longer have to say Kemet. Say Egypt. We can say Kemet. Everybody should know what you're talking about. We should not have to say hieroglyphs anymore. We should say Sesh Medu Netre. Everybody should know what you're talking about. We don't have to say Egyptians. We could say the Remich. Everybody will know what you're talking about. Because the only way to get people to really understand is to start using it. So yeah, those are things that we have to start doing. Another term that came up. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just wanted to let those listening know that all of that that has been mentioned by both you and June are in the beginner's book, the very first section. So those terminologies, I think is something that it's just we should get, people, or those people who are actually trying to discuss the language should actually just learn to use those other correct terminologies, and they are in the beginner's book. So that is a beginner's introduction to Medu Neter. If you haven't gotten the book yet, please do. We will help speed up your learning and also just be part of a healthy conversation. And I also just wanted to add just a little bit that I guess is the thing that is missing is just that most people would like to discuss about Kemet, but don't do the studies about it. And and then some people would also like to just I guess because Kemet is like this buffet or whatever that everybody would like to get a little piece of, and do a little bit of grafting. So they will take a little bit of Kemet and then transplant it into their belief system, and then try to define not just their belief system, but actually transfer that to what Kemet is supposed to be. And we have to be careful with that, because the point that I think you've always stated is that it's not us to define the Rematch, but it is for us to understand how the Rematch defined or view the world, and that is what we are supposed to learn. So that is part of the shift in the the paradigm and our viewpoint. So like our bearing should just be on what the Rematch viewed their world as, instead of what we would like to define them as. Just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, those are excellent points. Just quickly, I want to address, I'm gonna say ETM Hotel to those who are tuned in now and watching, because when we first get started, I know that these are not like pre-advertised hangouts that we have. So, I know it takes some time for people to tune in and check us out and chime in and hang out with us. So I want to say ETM Hotel for those who are just now tuned in, watching and everything. And I'm checking out the chat, and I believe it's a sister. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Anuket of Kemet. I just want to address a comment. She said, I would love to see, I think I skipped around, but basically she wants to see or hear a conversation, a 5-10 minute conversation in the language. I just want to comment on that, is that when we talk about pronunciations or a conversation of the language, we all have to understand that the pronunciations of Rani Kemet are all tentative. They're all conventional tentative. And these are based on the consensus of the scholars being able to discuss and utter the words. All right. And the reason for this is because in the writing system itself, there's no documentation of the vowels, and you can't speak a language without vowels. So the spoken language had vowels for sure. I mean, everyone understands that, but they weren't documented. And this is not something that is far-fetched or out of the ordinary, because Arabic and Hebrew do the same. Nowadays in Arabic, in both Arabic and Hebrew writing systems, they have assistance for people with these dots, the dotting system. Within the Hebrew and also within the Arabic, you have these different diacritic markings within the script itself that will help you identify the different vowels. But if you go back to the older text, in both Hebrew and Arabic, you won't see that. And so you have to actually be a native person who grew up and speak it in order to really understand what the words are, what the vowels are within those words and things like that. So with Rani Kemet and the writing system, Sesh Medu Neter, the vowels are not documented. So what early Egyptologists did in order to discuss it and have a to be able to say a word, is that they added the arbitrary E in between each of the consonants. So for example, we'll say for the word for health, we know the consonants are S, N as in Nancy, and B as in boy, but the vowels are not documented. So what early Egyptologists did was they would put an E in between the consonants. So they would pronounce it as Seneb. All right. And so that became the standard pronunciation. Now, none of these Egyptologists ever claimed that the pronunciations that were conventional were historic. You know, in other words, they never claimed that the way that we pronounce these words today are actually the way that the ancient Remech pronounced these words. So we have to keep all that in mind when we talk about having a conversation in the language, because conversation in the language happens all the time. I mean, you can actually YouTube and see and hear people say whole prayers or hymns within the language and everything. So if you want to hear it, and also if you want to hear the closest thing to what they call in Middle Egyptian and whatnot, is just YouTube Coptic. There are plenty of Coptic videos out there where you hear Coptic being spoken. And people have to realize that Egyptologists will tell you within all of their books that they say or assert that Coptic is the last stage of the ancient Egyptian language. And so this is what people don't understand, is that on one hand, people will have the impression that the ancient Egyptian language, Rodney Kemet, is dead. And then on the other hand, they'll read the same from the same scholars. They'll say Coptic is the last stage of the ancient Egyptian language, and it is still spoken today by the Coptic church as a liturgical language. So it can't be dead and then yet still be spoken. So, or it can, and people have to understand what linguists mean by dead. There's a difference between a dead language and an extinct language, because Hebrew was a dead language, but it wasn't extinct. So the Jews in being placed and you know, moving towards statehood and things with the whole Zionist movement and stuff in World War II, 1948, and acquiring the state of Israel, et cetera, they moved towards reviving the Hebrew language. It was dead though, but it wasn't extinct. So it was enough people that were still speaking it on a priestly level, or, you know, a more administrative, rabbinical level, or whatever the case is, to where they were able to sit down, get the proper funding, get all of the people behind them, and tackle that project of reviving the language to where it is today. It's several generations in. It's actually the official language over there, and so on and so forth. So if we ever want to see this process at work, all we got to do is look at what the Jews did with the Hebrew language, but that language was dead. So it's a difference between extinct and dead. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that. And so the quote unquote ancient Egyptian language is dead. And by dead, it's not an official language of any community of people, but it's still spoken. So remember that it's not dead, but it's still spoken, and you can hear it all the time. All right. And maybe one day we'll set up on a hangout and we'll just have a conversation, because the kind of conversation that we would have, because the language is dead. Now remember, it's not extinct, but it's dead. And it's not an official language of any community. Therefore, the lexical inventory of the language is not up to date, meaning that the things that we talk about today, like if I have a conversation with someone and say, hey, can you text me your number in my cell phone? Or if I say, hey, my cell phone battery died, meet me at so-and-so, you know, can you pick me up in the car? Can you, you know, I'm going to Uber here, Uber there, whatever. The kind of words that we use today that is contemporary with our living today, we won't find a lot of those words in the lexicon of Rodney Kemet, because the language is dead. And so it didn't keep up with the latest inventions, latest things that we deal with on a day-to-day today. So if anybody wants to hear a conversation in Rodney Kemet, it won't be a conversation like an everyday conversation that I would have in English, for the reason that I just explained. All right. So any conversation that you do hear spoken in Rani Kemet, based on its lexicon, would be dated. It would be something you had to talk about something old. All right, so keep that in mind as well. All right, so I just don't want anybody's expectation to be off the meter from where it's supposed to be. All right, so hope everyone keep that in mind. And I'm gonna probably scroll up on these on the chat. So anyway, so I just want to make sure that that was understood. But yeah, so well, what else was there? Hope I didn't get off topic. I was just trying to scroll up and see what's I see Asar Ka says some people use old Medu Neter and some Middle Egyptian. Now with that, old Rani Kemet and what they call a Middle Egyptian or Middle Rani Kemet, they're very much alike. The split, the demarcation is drawn between, remember, what Egyptologists called Old Egyptian and Middle Egyptian is grouped together and separate from Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. So Egyptologists divide the language into 5 stages. They call it Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. So they group the last 3 together, Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. They group those together, and then they group Old Egyptian and Middle Egyptian together. Now, there's a reason for that, because Old Egyptian and Middle Egyptian are synthetic languages. Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic are analytic languages. So these 2 major divisions represent the fact that in ancient Kemet, there were multiple languages spoken there, and that out of those multiple languages, we can reduce them down at the very least to 2 distinct languages that were there. So everybody thinks that ancient Kemet was just this monolingual kingdom. Everybody all spoke the same language exactly the same way, and that's just not true. And it become very apparent in Coptic, because if anybody research Coptic, or if any of you all are studying Coptic right now, you'll realize that when Egyptologists describe Old Egyptian, they just say Old Egyptian. When they describe Middle Egyptian, they just say Middle Egyptian. When they say Late Egyptian, they just describe Late Egyptian. Demotic, same way. It's not until Coptic that they start to talk about dialects. You got the Baharic dialect, the Sahidic dialect, the Fahumic dialect, the Akhmimic dialect, all these different dialects of Coptic, as if to say that it wasn't until Coptic that the kingdom experienced dialects. And that's just not true. So, and there's a whole bunch of information that shows and explains what I'm saying, but I'm just giving you all the gist of it. That Old Egypt, what they call an Old Egyptian and Middle Egyptian, are pretty much very similar, very similar. So that wouldn't be too much a difference, and that wouldn't be too hard for 2 people to understand one another from that. It's not until you get to Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic that where you have differences, the bigger differences, because it is more analytic. They have more function words than like Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian are more inflectional. Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic are less inflectional and have more function words. That means that the whole language is more analytic. All right. And so just wanted to make sure everyone understands that. But yeah, I mean, the floor is open. I'm just going through the chat. I'm trying to catch up with everybody.
Yeah, the word Tama, who was brought up also, and Prince York was claiming to know the exact pronunciations.
Yeah, I heard that too, and that's just completely false. And see, on a platform like that, you can't really have a real good discussion, because if you claim to have if you're emphasizing proper pronunciations, what do you mean by proper pronunciations? Because what you're saying or implying is that you're talking about the historical accurate pronunciations. And therefore you have to show, what are you basing that on? Because the vowels are not there. Like, for example, I forgot one of the examples that I heard them say. Maybe if any of you all remember, um, remember one example. But I know on the word Kemet, they said the brother Prince York was saying they say Kemim. Now that extra M in there doesn't exist in the language. That's something that's innovated and just created and stuck. You know, it's just something new, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't claim that it's ancient if you can't back it up. You know, it's just real simple. You know, and that's why we have to be more scientific. Science is about evidence. Math is about proof. Okay, math is the domain that governs logic and proof, and science governs procedure, experimentation, and evidence. It's just that simple. So we need to be more mathematically and scientifically literate and put it to practice. But when it comes to pronunciations, people are going to lose every time until they can show, you know, the method that brought them to their conclusions. But yeah, I did hear the Tamahu or Tamhu used for Europeans and things. And we just have to keep in mind that in those ancient times, the people did not have the concept, the mental construct that we have today of race. It was just different, completely different paradigm. The differences that was emphasized, and to make those differences, were more so cultural in your behavior, not your skin color. And your culture dictated your behavior. It dictated your dress code and how you conducted yourself. And those differences were grouped together and classified among ancient peoples, not your skin color and all this other kind of stuff that we deal with today. You know, so when we say ta mehu, the word meh means to drown, or something that is inundated or under. It's underwater. Matter of fact, one of the crocodile deities, or an epithet for one of the crocodile deities, I believe Sobek, one of the epithets for the crocodile deity is mehu, which means that which is submerged, because crocodiles submerge themselves underwater. So mehu means low, submerge, drown, below. Comes from a word for feet and foot. Okay, so mehu was the name given to the delta area, the swampy area where it's at sea level. And everyone should know that the Nile River flows from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. And the higher elevation is south on our maps, going towards Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and so on and so forth, in the mountain areas. And then it flows towards sea level, emptying out in the Mediterranean Sea. What's the Mediterranean Sea today? To the ancient Remish, it was known as Wedge Wer, which means the Great Green. So that sea to them was called the Great Green, and the Happy Itaru, or the Nile River, emptied into the Great Green. And where it emptied at, that land area right there was at sea level, and at oftentimes below water and swampy. So they called it the Mehu. So Ta Mehu, the land that's, you know, submerged, the submerged land. And so it also became a word for north, because people that came from that direction, or whatever the case is, they were associated with that land as well. So in that sense, when people want to say Europeans or whatever the case is, because Europe is in that direction relative to the ancient Remish, it would be in that direction, that general direction, then, you know, I can understand people referring to them as the Tamhu or Tamehu and things like that. All right. But, you know, you won't find a historical specific thing like that with the Europeans. They didn't have that. And then, you know, Europeans is a very broad term, just like saying Africans. You know, Africa is a big, huge place. How many countries in Africa? What, 53? How many countries are in Africa? Anybody know?
I think it's 54 at the moment with the new South Sudan.
Okay, about 54 countries. So Africa is a very broad thing. You know, Europe is big, and where they cut Europe off at? Like, is Russia part of Europe, or is that part of Asia? You know, we know China is Asia, and some people just bypass all that and say Eurasia. Anyhow, but yeah, that was another term as well. Anything else? I'm just looking at the chat. We can also, this is Brother Asad Mka, we can also still find words pronounced in Ma or Masai of the Masai, Collagen of the Collagen people, Wolof of the Senegalese, as well. But again, we have to be careful because even those are not historical pronunciations, though. We can find cognates and we can find, you know, the way that they're pronounced in those languages, definitely. But to actually backtrack and trace out the historical pronunciations, that is a monumental job that's done very meticulously and scientifically. And you have to be deal with comparative linguistics and actually get into the sound laws and things like that. And really, you know, a lot of people realize that there's a lot of the historical pronunciations, once lost, they're lost. And so it will become a matter of consensus, but the consensus will be scientific as opposed to just being random and just, you know, just because somebody feels that this is how something should be pronounced. So you can develop a formula and a systematic way of coming to a consensus, you know, and there's a lot of ways that can take place. You know, the majority rules. So just to give you an example, let's just say we have 20 African languages that descend from a common parent language. All right. So y'all follow me on this. Let's say we have 20 contemporary African languages that are spoken today, that they all descend from a parent language, you know, in historical times. So we can find within those 20 language what's called cognates, because a cognate are two or more words that are genetically related with a common parent, all right, in form and in meaning, all right. Now the forms can slightly change because the environment of these different sounds can change. You know, like the P could become a B, the words could be palatalized, and so on and so forth, all right. And that's not too hard to understand once you get into that kind of study. But just for the sake of this example, let's say we have those 20 languages and we're finding, let's just pick a word for stomach. And we find the word for stomach in all 20 of those languages. And we know that these languages already, because prior work was done to understand that all these languages are sibling languages from a common parent. So we find the word for stomach in all these languages, and then we'll notice that within each of these 20 languages, the word for stomach will be slightly different. The voweling, even some of the consonants may be different. And, you know, it could be explained, but I'm just saying you'll find that they'll be different. Some of the consonants may be lost completely. You know, let's say the last consonant in some of the languages, we totally reduced to zero. It's not there anymore. Or some initial consonants may not be there anymore, whatever the case is. And so we take that list of 20 words for stomach, and then we could do what's called an average as far as the vowels, because our focus will be on the vowels. We could take the vowels of those 20 and use the majority rule, the majority wins type of thing. So let's say the vowel in the first vowel, which will be labeled V1, the vowel number 1 after the first consonant, which will be C1. So we have C1 and then V1. So the first vowel in the first position, let's say for all the words out of those 20, let's say 12 of them, that first vowel was an O. and then the other 8, it was an A. So that means the O is the majority and the A is the minority. So we could decide and come to a consensus and agreement that, okay, we're going to use the O for the first vowel in the Rani Kemet word. You see, and so I'm not going to continue with the example. But I'm just showing you a way that could be done. But I'm oversimplifying this now because it takes a lot of meticulous work to even get to the point where you recognize these 20 languages are sibling languages and all the cognates and so on and so forth, you know, from the get-go. But I'm just giving you an example of how this could be done, you know, and that in fact that it could be done. But at the end of the day, it will be consensus involved. It's not going to be an instance where we you know, we could time travel and, you know, record the ancient Remech speaking and then bringing it back to the present time and then mapping out our vowels and things like that. All right. So we got to keep all that in mind. But yeah, it sounds like I'm kind of hogging the mic. So what is Kemet? I'm just looking at, I'm trying to catch up on any questions in the chat real quick. So let me just do that real quick. So Cranston Cooper Jr., what is Kemet? With a H? I don't know. Kemet, the first K in Kemet doesn't have an H. Usually when people spell it with a KH, they're coming from the Hebrew influence of Chem, which is how they say Ham, one of the sons of Noah. All right, so just keep that in mind. Kemet is not spelled with a KH. It's just a K. All right, and it's KMT. The consonants in that word will be KMT. All right, and a lot of topological names, topographical names for place names, I should say, they're feminine. All right, and every single noun in the language of Rani Kemet among the Remech is either masculine or feminine. Every single one of them. All right, so that's a lot different than English, but every noun has to be either masculine or feminine. And so Kemet would be, well, a lot of place names would be feminine. All right, the majority of the place names are feminine. And you know, there's psychological, there's reasons for that as well. Small differences such as him necher starts with him, ka him, etc. Per unk turns into per a, and different derivative. I'm quoting Asarim Ka. Per unk, per a. Okay, yeah, I'm not clear on that because per unk would be the house of life. Per unk was the umbrella term for the house of life that contained different smaller houses or compartments. You had libraries, you had the per majat within the per unk. You had a lot of different things within the per unk. And the per a was the administrative house. So it not necessarily would be the same. It would be that the per unk turned into the per a. These are different agencies. And if anybody wants to know about the ancient Kemet's administrative hierarchy and things like that, there's 2 good books to get. One is kind of expensive, but you may find it floating around there, but it's actually called Ancient Egyptian Administration. I would recommend people to get that, study that, read that, get familiar with the terms and the branches of government and the agencies and how they were connected and interrelated with each other, and kind of get a good feel of that. So yeah, I'm just trying to catch up. I'm just saying, any more questions? Nope. All right, so Yeah, the floor is open. You know, I'll just make sure not missing anybody, make sure nobody's not left out in the chat. Let's see who we got here. So yeah, anything else?
Yeah, I just seen somebody wrote, are any of us a part of the Brother Jabari Shrine of Ma'at? No, we are not at all. We don't have a problem with the brother, but we are not a part of his organization. And one thing I got from watching, because I did watch it earlier today, actually, he openly said he does not know the language. You know, so he's been on, I think he said about 30 tours, 30 plus tours, and he doesn't know the language. He said his wife knows the language. So, you know, that conversation that they had, it should have been between Prince York and his wife, honestly, because he's a historian. They weren't talking about they weren't talking about history per se. They were talking about languages. They were talking about Hieratic, Coptic. They were talking about written scripts. So he said his wife is an expert in that. So in my opinion, I believe she should have been the one talking to Prince York, not him. Because I seen Prince York reference a couple. He said he speaks about 4 dialects. Then later on in the conversation, he said he speaks 6 dialects. So I don't know about that, but because he switched it up, he said from 4 to 6. But I believe that should have been a conversation between him and his wife. And when I was watching the video, he asked him, like, Jabari kind of was like, in the beginning, I feel like he was kind of losing the argument because he was stuck on them switching the Y to the I. And Prince York just basically said, like, we did it because we wanted to be different. But he was stuck on it. And it's like, okay, if I say I want to do it to be different, I'm doing it to be different. You don't have to agree with it. We're doing it to identify ourselves as Nuwapians or Nuwapu, whatever that is. I don't know nothing about that. But I kind of understood what he was coming from when he said we switched the Y to an I. Like, you can do that, you know. If you want to do that, you can do that to reach the masses of people. And then he was harping on him about saying Egypt. But he was like, I'm using Egypt to grasp the knowledge of people who don't understand the word Kemet, which I agree with as well. You can't just come to me and say Kemet and I don't know nothing about Egypt. You got to say Egypt and then bring me into Kemet. So I believe he should have had that conversation with his wife. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with the language part, because you wanna I mean, anyone who's competent in any particular issue should be the one that actually holds the conversation. So, but what I do know about Jabari from what I've seen is that he and his wife work as a team. So when they go on the tours, he goes with his wife. So his wife is the expert, is the more competent one about the language. Then I'm sure that when they're on the tour, when issues of language come up, I think she steps to the forefront and takes care of business. When it comes to the issues of history or whatever, I would imagine that Jabari would step to the forefront and handle business. So I think they work as a team. But you're right. During that conversation, I don't think she was there though, based on what I saw. So he, you know, because Prince York brought it up, while Jabari was just there, then I think Jabari just kind of handled that on that level. But yeah, she would have been a more qualified person to speak on it. But he said that. He actually said that as well in the video. I mean, I heard him say that much. He said that his wife is the one that that deals with that and stuff like that. But Prince York didn't leave it alone at that point. So, you know, the only thing you could do is just still address it. But about the Egypt thing,
I don't think either one of them left it alone, though. I don't hold none of them, like Prince York didn't leave it alone or Jabari didn't leave it alone. They both didn't leave the dialect alone because Jabari was kind of pushing like, okay, why do you keep saying this? But he's not qualified to even combat that information. That's my stance on it. Like, I don't know Prince York. That's the first time I ever seen him ever. I have watched Jabari's videos, but like Jabari previously said he wasn't qualified to speak on the matter, but he continued to speak on the matter.
well, I think he only spoke on on Egypt. Like he took issue with Egypt. And one thing I do agree with Jabari on, as a teacher, at some point you have to push the people to learn what you want them to learn. So if we're always using the word Egypt, then how are people going to ever learn Kemet, the word Kemet? And because they're on Soneta's platform, everybody and their mother, a very high percentage of the audience that listens and watch Soneta's platform understands the word Kemet. And I think that's the point Jabari was making, because Soneta hosted Kemet on trial. They didn't say Egypt on trial. They said Kemet on trial. Part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever, all these different things. They got Facebook groups out there called Hebrews Against the Kemetics. All this other kind of stuff. So on that particular platform, and even among the Wapians, everybody understands Kemet. Now, the reason why they don't use the word Kemet is because they believe that it comes from Hebrew. The word Ham, Kim, the son of Noah. That's why they don't use it. And the swapping of the I for the Y is perfectly fine. I think Jabari conceded to that. But I think the issue was that why go through that trouble when we could just use Kemet? Like, why make yourself distinct and change the I to a Y, which means that you want to keep Egypt? Like you're tricking out or putting a spin on a word that's not indigenous or even close to being indigenous or whatever the case is. And so that was his point. He was like, well, why do all of that? Like, you can do that. You're free to do that. But why? When we could just say Kemet. And I think that was the point that he made, and why he didn't leave it alone, because he was trying to get Prince York to see that point. Like, why do that though? Like, you could do it. Like, you know, clearly everybody's free to do what they want. Matter of fact, he said that he conceded to the point of them even creating a new language. But just say it's new. Don't say it's ancient. Just say it's new, and you create a new language. Like, man, hats off to you. But just don't say it's ancient. And then if you're trying to create if you created a new language, trying to mislead people into thinking that it's ancient, just so that you could say that it is ancient Egyptian at that, then now we have a problem. Because why go through all that trouble when you could just learn ancient Egyptian or Sesh Medu Neter and Rani Kemet? Just learn it. That's it. So I think that's another point that Jabari was making, which I wholeheartedly agree with. You know, see, I'm familiar with the Nuwapian doctrine, full stop. And I know what they teach, I know what they push, and I know why they teach what they teach, and the whole nine. And those are the reasons. You know, the Nuwapian organization has within it a smaller a branch called the Ancient Egyptian Order. And when they came up with that title, the Ancient Egyptian Order, that's when they changed the Y to an I. And one of the reasons why was because the I is the 9th letter of the English alphabet, and they wanted to tie it into the number 9, which is to them the symbol of birth and growth and 9 ether and the sun and all that stuff.
He did say that. I did see Prince York say that. Why they changed it to I and all that stuff. So
right. It has to do with a little bit of numerology. Right. So they threw a little bit of numerology in there and all this other kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with anything ancient or historical. And I think that's fine. I think Jabari conceded to that, but he's like, why go through all of that when we could just learn the language of the ancestors? Because that's what you're implying Nuwapic to be, pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic and so on and so forth. So I to me, I think that Jabari was on point to stick with it, even though any details he admittedly wouldn't be qualified to discuss. But on that Egypt point, I think that that was a very valid point. And I think that people need to
disconnect was okay. What you just said was correct, but he's not qualified to speak on the matter. So I feel that you're fighting for it, but like you're not qualified to speak on it, so you need to bring somebody in there who is qualified to speak on it. That's my only thing. Like, you need
Neither one of them. neither. But the difference.
That's what I'm saying. To put the smash down on it, you need, because if somebody not qualified and the other person ain't qualified, but they assuming to be qualified, and you just admitted that you weren't qualified, but the other person is assuming to be qualified, you automatically X yourself out.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is he needed to have. Well, I don't know if she was there or not, but it would have looked a lot better on Jabari's behalf if his wife could have just stepped in. Put the
I think she came in while they were at the tail end, because I did hear him say that's Anika coming in. I remember hearing him say that. So I don't think she was there the whole time until the end. So maybe they'll well, actually I don't think so, because the brother Prince York did a second video afterthought video where he got very, very disrespectful. So I don't think that they're probably gonna have a conversation like that again. And really, I don't, you know, like I said, I think Jabari's doing a good job, but that couldn't be me. I mean, I'm gonna tell, I tell people this all the time. That couldn't be me, because I don't think that some of that stuff should even be dignified with the attention, because we got too much other things to do and to entertain, because some of that stuff is silly. Now, the worthwhile stuff, yeah, but not that silly stuff, and the majority of it is silly.
I think I think they should have stayed on the initial topic at hand. When they first started out the conversation, Jabari said he wanted to know more about the Nuwapu or Nawapic society, but then they started getting into linguistics, which he openly said he's not qualified. And they was talking about Heradic and all. When they were talking about they mixed written script with dialect, and it was all over the place. So to the listener that's actually know these words that they were saying, they were all over the place. So honestly, the conversation was null and void to me, because it was two people that was throwing words out that neither one of them knew what they was talking about, honestly. But he should have just kept the conversation on better understanding of what is Nuwapic or what is Nuwabian, because I think that was the basis of the conversation. Now, when they start getting into linguistics, Prince York said he's not a linguist, and Jabari said he doesn't know Medu Neter, but that's where the conversation meshed at, and that's where they stayed at. I didn't watch part 2, I watched part 1, because I've seen enough in part 1. I've seen enough in part 1.
So, not to cut you off, but when he had a conversation, meaning Prince York, had to sit down with Garfield, he was teasing Garfield about not being a linguist and uttered that he was a linguist. So you're saying that he admitted that he was not a linguist?
Yeah. He said he was not a linguist. He said he was not a linguist. He said he didn't claim to be. He said he's not a linguist. So he said that. I watched it earlier today, like for real, like not even 2 hours ago.
But so listen, okay, y'all have to realize the type of mentality that we're discussing, you know what I'm saying? So I think you said it already, that one reason why I stand on Jabari's side, I agree with Jabari's issue on this point, is because that Jabari was the one that invited Prince York over. And he was transparent with his intentions. There was no hidden agenda, nothing like that. It was Prince York that changed the conversation flow and style. He whipped out the laptop and wanted to do a question and answer thing. And y'all have to understand that is the structure and the way that Nuwabians interface with the world, through question and answer. That's their style.
Now, was this part 2 or part 1? Because I didn't see part 2. I just seen part 1. I didn't see them whip out. No.
Yeah, I think this is part 2, because that's psychologist and everything. So
okay,
that's part 2. That's in part 2. So if you're talking about if you just saw part 1, then part 1 I can understand why you're saying what you're saying. But check out part 2, and you'll see exactly how because part 2 they rehash what they were saying in part 1, but with the he whipped out the laptop. Jabari had like only 3 slides because he didn't have any slides at all. But while Prince York was talking, Jabari just, I guess, put together 3 slides just to explain something, and you know, so the conversation continued in part 2. I saw part 2, so you're speaking about part 1, and I didn't watch that one. I watched part 2. So
if you watch part 1, you don't even need to see part 2, because at part 1, they don't know what they talking about in part 1. Neither one of them. So I didn't even make it to part 2 because I'm like, they don't even know what they're talking about in part 1.
Well, the bottom line is that today, that's why I emphasized learning the language. That's just period, point blank. And that's something that Jabari was pushing. So Jabari is right in that, to learn the language. He openly full admission that he's not the expert in Medu Neter, his wife is, and he's telling people to learn the language. Period. That's it. I mean, they
both admitted that they didn't know the language. That was enough for me right there. That was
enough. That's a little different because Nuwapians claim that Nuwapik is ancient Egyptian, though.
Right, he did say that, but I don't believe that. So
No. I mean, whether we believe it or not, or whether we know that's just not true, that's just what they believe, though. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different thing, because he's trying to push that there's similar. He said 85% of the language is Medu Neter and blah blah blah, this that, and the other, and it's not. I mean, it's just not. Nuwapik itself, the Nuwapik, what they call it, Nuwapik or Nuwapui, as the language that they call it, started off simply as another script of Arabic originally. And a lot of Nuwapians don't even know that, but all they have to do is go back to the Nubic books, the old Nubic. But if any Nuwapians out here listening to me right now, or are gonna hear this archive, just go back in your archives in the books, go back to the Nubic language books, when all Nubic was Arabic. That's all it was. It was Arabic, spoken Arabic, but it was using a different script for Arabic. And it was called the Nubic script, speaking Arabic. But Dr. York called it Nubic because it was the Nubian Islamic Hebrews. So it was the language of the Nubians. So he called it Nubic, Asi, meaning of Nubians. So Nubic language, but it was simply just Arabic. And Nuwapic was just one of the scripts of that particular language, which was Arabic. Then in 1996, he changed the name from Nubic to Nuwapic. So now it's just got a new name, but the entire time it's simply Arabic. And over time, all that was done was the borrowing of different words from different dictionaries of different languages to put in there. And what took place in 1996, when the language name changed to Nuwapic itself, was that they took the consonants, stripped them of its vowels, and plugged back in a vowel system of the A and the U. So like, for example, anybody knows Arabic, let's just say the Arabic root word to sit, like to sit down, that's the word jalasa. That's the root word, jalasa. And so in Nuwapic, all we would do is we would say jalus. So the A will stay the A, but the next A will change to a U. That's it. Jalus became to sit. And then if you want to conjugate it, if you say I sit, you sit, she sit, he sit, you would just simply conjugate it through the different 19 forms of conjugation, and so on and so forth. That was just simply Arabic, just changing the vowels. That's it. That's all it was. But over time, from 1996 till today, E.A. Wallace Bud's dictionary was used heavily to take Egyptian words and to put them inside the vocabulary of Nuwapic to give the appearance that it's ancient Egyptian, but it's not. Like, for example, I don't know if you saw this, Satep, they talk about something called the Unktwi. Now, there's a whole bunch of Nuwabians that will say the Unktwi is ancient Egyptian, but Prince York today was saying, no, it's not ancient. It's something that's new, and it's something that we do because it's a double resurrection. This is our resurrection of today, and blah, blah, blah. So he went through the whole thing with that. But what he is incorrect on is that the Unktwi mean double Unk, because they're actually showing the ignorance of the language. So they're taking the word Unk and putting the word Twi on there to say that it's dualizing the word Ankh. And they're taking that Twi from the word Tawi, because Tawi is the word for the dualization of the word Ta for land. So Ta is land, Tawi is two lands, because the WY on Tawi makes that masculine noun dual. So we have Tawi. They took the A off and say Twi. So they're saying Twi is dual, and they're putting Twi onto Ankh. So now they're saying Ankh Twi, as if it's two Ankhs, the double Ankh. And that's just completely wrong. Totally wrong. So that just shows and confirms and proves that the language has nothing to do with Rodney Kimmett. The grammar is not the same. None of that's the same. None of the grammar, the morphology or the syntax, none of it is the same. They're just borrowing words and slapping onto it Arabic principles, Semitic grammatical principles, and rules and things on top of it. That's it.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that by you saying that, because like the certain keywords that you use, like Semitic and all that, he used that in the first video. He was saying in Arabic as well. He said the first languages that he learned was Arabic, and then he was saying Semitic languages as well. So I can see how they threw them words in there, or not words, how they threw them consonants and them vowels in there, because he was talking about interchangeable consonants and interchangeable vowels. I wasn't adhering to none of that, because like I said, both of them, I believe both of them was both of them, they didn't know what they was talking about. But Jabari openly admitted that he didn't know what he was talking about. That's the difference between the two. But they didn't know what they was talking about. That's why I didn't make it in the video too. I didn't make it there. I was like, I'm done watching it.
But see, that speaks volume. Just see, to be a scholar and to be more mature, you have to acknowledge your strengths and your weaknesses. And for the simple thing of Jabari admitting that he doesn't know this or doesn't know. And matter of fact, Jabari raised this question to Prince York himself. He says, brother, when you don't know something, why don't you just say you don't know? Why don't you just say, hey, Jabari, I'll get back to you on that, or whatever the case is. And I forgot what the brother Prince York's response was, but Jabari even brought that up, because he's like, look, when I don't, I'm not an expert on this. And I said so. I say so.
Right.
And see, that's the more mature, that's the maturity in that. So you could just tell, and that goes a long way. And that's what we all need more of around here. People to just be honest with your strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, like I don't, me myself, I don't talk about things I don't know. And if I don't know something and we're having a conversation, a probing conversation, then I'll probe with you. But I'll say, look, I don't know this. I'm just let's just talk it out. Let's just kind of reason things out and talk and take notes. And that way we could formulate some real good research questions to go investigate, and then come back and huddle up again and find out what we found out. That's how you do that. You know what I'm saying? So people just got to be more honest with that. So I think the dialogue, like, I mean, we're talking about that, but like I said, I don't even think that none of that should have been dignified in the first place. But Jabari wanted to talk to the brother. That just wouldn't have been me. But since he did, that's what we're talking about. And because it's on a large platform, we got to realize Sanetta's platform is very big. So because it's on a large platform, for many people, this is the first time people are hearing about this and that. So we got to do a lot of work. Us as the Seshu Mahdi Meditation. By the way, somebody asked if we're part of another shrine. That is the Seshu. We are the Seshu Mahdi Meditation. So we're not, that's what we are. We're, I don't think people understand what the name means. Seshu Mahdi Meditation. Even though we don't have the word shrine or institution within our title itself. Like people will have the shrine of something, the shrine of Ptah, the shrine of Ma'at, the shrine of this, the shrine of that. We don't have that in our title. Our title is strictly Rodney Kimmett or Sesh Metal Nature within the language itself, and the Sesh Ma'ani Metal Nature, which are the loyal scribes of divine words, aspiring to be true scribes of divine words. And institution is being built. So, hopefully that will answer that. I just want to kind of touch on that too.
My thing is, I wish they would have stayed to the initial topic, like what Jabari asked him. He wanted to find out more about the Nuwapians and Nuwapic. I wanted to as well, so that's what I thought they was talking about. Like that's what I thought the conversation was going to be about, but it went to left field because they got stuck on words, which we normally do when we in debates. And they said it wasn't debate, but when we're in discussion, somebody will say Egypt and like, oh no, say Kemet, and then you'll be stuck there for 2 hours. But it's like, okay, what is Nuwabian? What is Nuwapic? Let the viewers find out what that is. Like, I don't want to know about. I know what Egypt is. I know what Kemet is. The viewers know what Egypt is. The viewers know what Kemet is. If they don't know, they found out. But we want to know about Nuwabians, Nuwapic. We want to know that. Like, I want to know that. So that's what the initial premise of the question was, and that's what the initial sit down was about. We didn't get that out of that.
Yeah, and
as a viewer, I didn't get that.
Right, and you know, me knowing what I know, that's why I said it wouldn't have been me, because that's not what you're gonna get. That it's from the get-go. That's just not what you would have gotten. Jabari just doesn't know that, and so what happened. And so from this point forward, Jabari learned that that's not what he got, and what he got was what he got. And so, you know, sometimes you have to go through something to learn it. And, you know, me, I already know what the outcome. Like, so if somebody were to tell me that, hey, Brother Jabari is planning to sit down with whatever, and I say, what's the topic? Yeah, we're going to find out about that. I'd have told him right then and there, nope, that's not going to happen. Sounds good, but it's just not going to happen. Yeah, they would have called me a prophet. I would have predicted the outcome of that conversation. You know, not down to the detail, but the general idea about the conversation, I would have predicted that and been right on point. I mean, because I know. But hold up, let me just address some of this. Oh, I'm sorry. It says King Keto or King Seto is asking to join the link to the chat. Yeah, if you have a question, type it in, and we may or may not open up the floor. You know,
yeah, we usually
it's not that kind of party where we just gonna open up the floor and the conversation can go anywhere. So if you do have a question, start in the chat and let's just see what you got, and we'll address it as best we can, and hopefully we can learn from each other. Or if we know the answer to your question, we'll give it, and if not, then it'll be something that we can investigate. But let's see what you got.
Wujao, I got a guy on here that says, can you explain your name? Would you mind explaining your name, your full name too? Not just Wujao Mened Eri Ma'at.
Okay.
Don't know.
What, in the chat? In the chat?
Yeah, somebody asked Wujao, please explain your full name.
Oh, right. Okay, I'm gonna do that in a second. Let me just see. I'm just going down the thing. Prince York said the Nuwabian nation is comparable to a Kemetic Masonic Blue Lodge. I have no idea what that would be, a Kemetic Masonic Blue Lodge. That doesn't make sense. Okay, it says I hit the bell. Okay, first time. What do you mean? I'm trying to see if this person has a question. Oh, I am a sincere brother that would like to join the convo. Please let me know if there's any setting for me to do. Maybe I'm late. Don't have one. Just like to join the convo. I have a perspective that's more precise. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, if you don't have a question, if you have a perspective, type out your perspective. Just go ahead and do that. But Cranston Cooper, he said, Wujao, please explain your full name. Yeah, it's Wujao, not Wujao. But it's Wujao Mened Eri Ma'at. And my name, Wujao, means he who is vitalized, or in a state of vitality, or a state of being sound, or in a state of prosperity. All right, because though everybody should know by now that when you translate from one language or a source language into a target language, it will be 99% of the time that you will not find a one-for-one comparison. That's why in English we have what's called synonyms. So we have several words that can mean and overlap for the same thing. So when I say vitality, somebody being sound or whole, like whole, sound, vital, prosperous, those are all synonymous. So wuja'u, it comes from the word, like when people say unk, uja, seneb, and that may be a more familiar term to people. They say unk uja seneb or unk uja seneb. That second word, uja, they're just not pronouncing the W, because there is no U in the writing system. So it's a W there. So it's actually wuja, unk wuja seneb. And so my name wuja'u is a stative verb. It means he who is in a state of being whole or being vital or being prosperous. All right. And then min'eb is a idiom, and it means min means to be stable. It's a word that means something that is stable or to be stable. Ib is a word literally meaning the heart, but it's a metaphor for the mind or the essence of someone. So it's a stable mind, stable heart. And these are idioms. Okay. So it's one who has a stable will. And then iri ma'at is a practitioner. The word ir means to do. Iri is one who does or practices, or one who actually engages. So one who practice ma'at, that which is true. So that's the meaning of my name. He who is prosperous with a stable will, a practitioner of that which is right or that which is true. That's what the full meaning of my name is. So hopefully that answers the brother question.
Now, who granted you that name?
My name was done through a divination ritual. All right, and this is a very common African practice where naming ceremonies are done. Your name, and that's a long conversation, but to give the short and skinny of it is that what we think of as a name today, we are actually utilizing it simply as labels. So what we're calling names are really labels today. But in more historical times, and even today in African communities, a name is much more than that. A name is your actual container for your entire identity. And so when children are named, when new babies are named and everything, they try to create a container. The word or the name itself or the string of words that become the name actually becomes a holding container for the very essence and identity of the person or the newly born person into this world. And so in order to do that, what people will do in these communities is that they will perform some form of divination, because they are trying to find out why you came into this world. What is your destiny? Why did you come here? And what business do you have here? What business are you to conduct here while here? And so people will do these divination ceremonies or rituals to divine or to do certain things to find out the answer to that. And once they find out the answer, whatever that answer is, then within the language of that particular community, a name will be made. And so that's what is done in contemporary African communities, in historical times, and even now. So, and that's how my name was given. So that's how my name was.
I'm just gonna ask a question just to keep the conversation going. When we all know the kings of Egypt had 5 different royal names, but they all started out with a birth name. And it started out with 5 names. It started out with 1 name, right?
Yeah, right.
So how was the process of them getting their first name done? And then I'll go into the conversation of them getting their 5 names. So how was their, in your opinion, how was their first name given to them?
Well, the first names, the first name that you say, you mean the first of the 5. So
right.
Because,
so we'll use a familiar king, Aten. That was his first name, right? That was his birth name.
no, it was actually, he changed it to Aten. It was Amen. Remember?
His birth name was Aten, or did he change it to Amen?
No. If you're talking about Akhenaten, his, Akhenaten, he changed it to Aten. It was Amen.
All right. So what was King Tut's?
Let's just use. Okay, you can use that one. I thought you were gonna use somebody even more.
No, I was just gonna use one that's popular. So what was King Tut's birth name?
It would be his Sarah name, whatever the Sarah name. And so I believe his birth name, and that's another thing. By the fact that you asking what was his birth name, and we should be able to recall, you should be able to just spit that right out. But
I thought it was Aten. That's what I thought it was. I mean, I can look it up real quick.
No, his birth name, right? Because he's coming from after Akhenaten, and then he changed it back. He changed it to Amen. So yeah, I thought you were talking about Akhenaten.
So would it be in Tu'unk? I know he changed the Amen. So would it be in Tu'unk Aten? How did his parents come up with his name? Like, because you said his meaning behind it. So we know that his name means a living image of Aten, but how did his parents come up with that name? If you have an answer for that.
Well, for all the kings, for everybody, your family name is to show your lineage. So you're gonna have the family names that will continue. That's why you have the third, the second, the thirds, the fourths, the fifths, and the sixths in the birth names. That's how come you see Ramses the second, Ramses the first, Ramses the second, Ramses the third, Ramses the fourth, and so on and so forth. Seti the first. All these first, seconds, and thirds, because those names that were given to family, it's not a singular name. You're given several names, and part of the name will be an attachment to your lineage that will show you that you are the father of so and so, or the son or daughter of so and so. So though all those names were done based on the meaning and through divination. And you can see this in the text with other kings that have survived, especially with Hatshepsut, for example. And I believe one of the Ramses, I want to say Ramses III, but I could be wrong. But those texts have survived where you can actually see that the various different priests actually performed divination to come up with their names or the confirmations of their names. And the family name was no different other than the lineage part, because the lineage part is self-explanatory.
Right. Because I know, like with King Tut, he was born Tut Aten, and then he switched it to Tut Amen. And then when he went through his divination, when he became king, his name was Neb Keperu Ra. If I'm not mistaken, I'm just going off the top of my head. So he went through a divination period to where they had to find out, his divination name, Neb Keperu Ra.
Okay, but it sounds like, I don't know if you're doing this, but for those who are listening, don't confuse divination name from the coronation name, because when you take the throne, you're coronated, and so they will call that the throne name or the coronation name. And a lot of those names were tied into the responsibility or the king projecting what they are going to accomplish while being a king in their lifetime. Because remember, the kings were on the throne for life, not until somebody died.
Like, could you go into detail about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, yeah, like with the full royal titulary of different kings, like a couple of ones that we've gone over before. We've gone over Seti the first because that's the one that a lot of people misinterpret as the spaceships and things like that in the temple of Seti the first. So we got Ramses the second and Seti the first full royal titulary that we've explained before on previous hangouts. And if you look at their full titulary, which will include all 5 of the names, and if you read them all together, you'll see that these are statements that the kings are making for the jobs and duties that they have, or that they wish to accomplish, or that they have accomplished, or that they want to continue accomplishing. And so that's where the epithets and the actual names themselves come into play. So if we just pick one, I know you brought up King Tut. But let's see. I'm trying to think of one that's different than the ones that we've already gone over. Well, let's just I'm just looking. Let's just say Tutmos the fourth, and we see that is Heru name is Kaneket to Kau or Tut Kau, which is victorious bull, which is Kaneket, and then we have Tut Kau, which is the very image of appearances. That's a horse name. Then the two ladies' name or the Nepti name would be Jed Nisit Mi Atimu, which means Jed Nisit. And this is a good example. I actually picked this at random, but this is actually a good example. Jed Nisit means stable. Because you have men that mean stable, Jed that means stable. Men is a horizontal stability, and Jed would be a more perpendicular or vertical stability. That's why you get the Jed pillar and then the men board. They're in two different directions of stability. But the Jed would be stability of Nisit, the institution of kingship. So his two ladies' name would be Jed Nisit, which means stable of kingship, or the stability of kingship. Me, which means like, to be like, or to imitate. And then it says Itimu, or we know as Atum, the deity Atum. So one of the things that his name is projecting out there is to stabilize or maintain stability of the kingship like Atum. So I'm just giving that as an example of what I meant earlier by a lot of these names and the epithets that go along with them will be declaratory statements of the king's job and what he continues to do, or you know, want to actually accomplish while they are king, because they know that they're a king for life. And a lot, like for example, the ones we have gone over with Seti the First and Ramses the Second, within their names, you'll notice that or put it this way, when a king, when you get to the kings that are involved with wartime kings like Ramses II and Seti, or kings that were that took the throne after major wartime and stuff like that, you'll notice that in their titulary, they'll have words that mean defender of Kemet, or a person who stomps out the enemies of Kemet, called the Nine Bows, or whatever the case is, the Pasejet of the foreign lands, you know, the Nine Bows and things like that. So the enemies and stuff. So you'll see that in there. So obviously the person wasn't born and given that particular name. That's a political statement. You know, sometimes these statements are done because of what they're facing and what they're dealing with at the time. So you'll get kings that will have these names, and then they will also acquire these epithets on there. But for those who are listening, we have a whole show on the royal titulary where we actually walk through all 5 of the names, what they call the Ren Wer, which is the great names of the king. All right. Or I should say Renu Weru, the great names of the king. So we went over that before. We discussed the Heru name. There's 5: the Heru name, the Nepti name, the Heru of Gold name, and then we have the throne name and the birth name. Throne name and birth name are the names that a lot of people are familiar with because they're within the Shenu, what most people will call the cartouche. And so a lot of people can recognize that because of the cartouche. The names that we call the kings by are the Sarah names, or the family names. So when we say King Tut Ankh Amen, that will be his family name, birth name. His is a little different because he switched it from Aten to Amun later. But when we say Hatshepsut, that's the family name. Her throne name would have been Ma'at Ka Ra. When we say Ramses, that's his family name, birth name. Depending on which one we're talking about, his throne name would be a little different. Ramses II, I believe his throne name would be Wasser Ma'at Ra, Satepenra for Ramses II or Ramses the Great. So, all right, let me try to catch up. So, anybody could take the mic, grab the mic, open mic. Mic is on the floor. Lisa Darcy. See, but did someone else name you? See, maybe we should do a show on that, like a whole presentation on to explain a little more about naming, because, we have to understand that names are different in our minds than they are in the African paradigm. And I say this a lot, though. I say, we have misnomers today. Misnomers mean a misname. Nomen is a Latin word for name, also the word for noun. So nouns are, we know them to be person, places, or things, whatever. They are words that refer to entities. And so what happens is you have what's called, at one point, what we call today adjectives, and today what we call nouns, were looked at as the same thing. And the reason why is because an adjective puts a property onto an entity, whereas a noun only refers to the entity. So adjectives refer to a property and an entity. So that's why they called it an adjective noun. So, or a substantive noun. And you have an adjective noun. So you had the substantive noun, which is just the entity, and then you had the adjective noun, which is the property and the entity together. And so reason why I'm saying this is because what we're calling a name today, we just use them as labels. We just call something because this is something that we just want to label it for naming purposes, just to be able to identify this different from something else. But we don't look into it and actually observe the properties of the thing and actually come up with a term that will encompass the properties that it exhibits as well as the entity that it is together. And so there was a process in doing that. And that would be the entire identity of something, not just the name. And I think last week I kind of gave an example of a remnant of it today, because regardless of what you say your name is, if, let's just give an example, if you are trying to buy alcohol or going into a club that requires you to have be 21 years or older, your age is an attribute of you. It is one of the properties that identify you. I mean, it's part of you. Your age is part of you, the essence of you, who, what you are as a person. And so if you walk into a club or a store to try to buy alcohol and you have to be 21, that's the requirement. They're not going to just take your word for it. They're going to want to see some form of ID, not your name, your identification, because today's system, they have it where our state identification or driver's license is done in such a way to where it can be trusted. They have, you got the magnetic strips in there and all this other kind of, what do you call it, fraud proof or tamper proof ways to validate your ID today, and so on and so forth. So they ask for that to prove that you are you and that you have the attributes that are required. And all of that's called your identity. And so that's the depths that they have to go through. Now, look at the other end. When it comes time to naming things, in historical times, we actually spent the time to observe something and an object and actually allow it to name itself. We come up with words based on how it behaves, how the properties and attributes that it exhibits or has. That's what we've done. All right. So when, and I'm saying all of this because when people ask, did somebody else name you? then it's kind of like a tricky answer to that, because in our minds now, we would say, yeah, did somebody name you? You say, yeah, okay, yeah, I named my child whatever. But back in the day, we would have a different understanding of that process, because it would be like, you are naming yourself. I'm just supplying a word in my language that describes you on how you are already. So you're actually naming yourself, or you are exhibiting certain properties already, because you are you. I'm just coming up with a word within my language to capture it. So in essence, you're naming yourself. I mean, in one way, you're naming yourself. So, you know, I don't want it to sound like mumbo jumbo or some semantic rhetoric, but I just want people to understand that you are what you exhibit. So, and that can change. So we're giving several different names, and today we call them names. We got first name, middle name, last name. And then throughout your life, you'll acquire what we call nicknames. And then we'll acquire something else that we call titles. So if you become a person that can fix food very good, and you get paid to do it, you'll be given a title of a chef, or, you know, whatever titles that go along with that trade. But it doesn't change your other names. You just acquire other titles based on your performance, your behavior, and what you do. You know, the things that you do. If you start protecting people, you become a public servant and protect people, you'll gain the title of a police officer, or whatever the case is, and go through, you know, you got to go through whatever mandates and stuff, but you'll gain the title of a police officer. So all of that will go into your basket of your identity of what you are.
I just wanted to quickly add, as an example to what you're talking about, especially with African namings, and in this example, like how the Luo people get their name, which is actually, I think, getting your name is actually the very, very first you know, ritual ceremony that you undergo, like when a person is born. And then you know, the Luo people have different kinds of different names, and the first name actually depends on, you know, what event transpires during your birth, which could be if it's a drought season, or what time of day. It could be the day, the season, or just a major event happening on your name. And then there's the other name which you get by that you know, through just the next period of your infancy, where they would you know, the elders, the people around you would actually pay attention to certain attributes that you know, that the child is displaying, and then that naming would be just a reflection of your, you know, of your character or attributes, and that goes in line with what you're talking about. So it's not that really that somebody actually names you, but you actually it is that you know, it's not somebody just trying to get any random name and putting it on you, but it's different attributes that that are reflected, and that is how you get your name. And obviously there's other different kinds of names throughout, but you know, just wanted to add that in there.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have anything? I'm just looking over the chat. I see the brother Aziz had put in there Rainy or Rane, and I'm assuming that's Wolof. I know the brother to be a student of Wolof, recognize and to identify. Yeah, the word Ren in Rani Kemet, Ren, is actually identity. People translate it as name, but that's very shallow because of our concept of what a name is. You know, so that's why I take my time to go into it a little bit more, like I did. Hopefully it didn't sound like I said, you know, because I'm trying to be kind of summary with it instead of being real long-winded. But your identity and your name today are two different things. But in a lot of communities today, and in historical times, your name was looked more so as your identity. To the point that in some African communities to this very day, if you don't have a name or if something is not named, then it doesn't exist. And even with that, that has to be explained, because how can it be that you're looking at something, but yet say it doesn't exist? And so it doesn't mean in the sense that we think it means. It means that it has no identification. You know, that means that it has not been, you know, its behavior has not been determined. Its properties, its attributes, its qualities have not been determined, because it does not have a name. Therefore, it does not exist, because existence encompasses all of that. And see, once we learn this language, especially with Ronnie Kemet or ancient Egyptian language, we'll understand that, because within the language, you'll realize that there's something in quite a few African languages, or other languages, period, but outside of English. But we have what's called genitive constructions in the language, which shows possession. And within the language, you'll realize that the ancient Remich did not see people as this homogeneous thing, this one thing. They viewed the person, or what we call a human being, as a composite of multiple things. And this composite of multiple things can each possess something or own something, or things can belong to it, or to the various different parts. And so in the language, you'll see that certain people will have ownership of something, but it won't be something that's tangible, like you own it, like you can put it into the bank or put it into a box or anything like that. It's actually part of your essence that actually owns it. And so maybe we can get into that in another hangout, where we can actually show examples of that, exactly what I'm talking about. And once you see that, you'll realize that a person's identity, or a person, is made up of a composite of different things, and collectively all of it is identified. And this is given the word foren. And so you're given this identity as not so much a label, like very shallow, like how we do things today. So they all have meanings. Remember, names are nouns, and all names have meaning. And the one thing that everybody should do, every single person, that they should find out the meaning of their own name. And I'm not talking about a special name that you got once you're an adult. I'm talking about your birth name that your parents gave you. For whatever reason they gave it to you, it should be everybody's desire to really, learn what it means, even if your parents didn't give it to you for that reason, but still learn the meaning of your name, because all names have meaning. You'd be surprised at what certain names mean. Common names. And we're so mixed up today, though. There was a way that you can tell by last name, your surname, of what communities that you came from. But a lot of times, especially Africans in the diaspora, African Americans that were part of the transatlantic slave Holocaust, is very, very difficult when it comes to names and trying to trace by way of names, because a lot of names were lost and cut off. But still, learn the meaning of your names. And this is the thing about names, since we're on that real quick, this is probably the last thing I'll say about names. Your name, part of your name, one of your names, part of your name should be your destiny. And like I said, different communities use different tools, but altogether there would be some kind of form of divination where they will try to determine why you came into the world and what your destiny is in the world. And so they would give you a name that reflects that destiny, so that when you're called on, that subconsciously you're constantly reminded of your goal, and through your life path, you can actually judge where you are in achieving that goal. So this is why a lot of times people no matter what their backgrounds are, once they get into some kind of indigenous system, be it African or otherwise, they always do something new. They either get a new name and or they do something that will resemble a social contract. And by that, what I mean is that a lot of these initiatory systems around the world will give a new name to someone based on the language that the tradition is governed by, and they'll do something that will show physical, contractual, a social contract. And what they will do is, for example, they will either shave all their hair off, or they would receive some kind of markings on the face, the cheek, the chest, the shoulders, the back, or whatever the case is, some kind of cuts called shaluks in, I believe, in East Africa. They'll get shaluks on their face. Some people call them scarification, different things. Some people will go through shaving their hair, shaving their eyebrows, or all the body hair, men or women, and stuff. And these are social contracts that are established, where your community can physically recognize that you are a part of a system, and now they know what to expect from you and what to hold you accountable for. And so they kind of go hand in hand. So a lot of people will receive a new name, and they will have to go through some kind of physical, contractual expression in that way. And that's how important this stuff is, because the new name that you're given most of the time ties into your destiny. And in ancient Kemet, for example, we always show this. We showed this before. If you ever look at the so-called Book of the Dead, papyrus, the various different ones where you see the scene of the judgment scene, where you see the scales of Ma'ad and so on and so forth, you will see in there. Matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can pull one up real quick, because some people may not even be aware that this is there. We went over this before, I believe, at least one time. But let me just see if I can pull one up real quick.
Why you pulling that up? I want to ask a question now. What if you give yourself a name / title because you feel that's your destiny? You didn't go through no divination system per se, but you feel like this is what I'm meant to do. So what if you give yourself a name?
Yeah, that's not recommended at all, because and that can create a problem, because your name, it has to be objective and it can't be subjective. And when you name yourself by the way, you know, how you just described it, you'll be opening yourself up to be subjective. And that's why they perform divination, because it takes it outside of you, outside of yourself. Because if that was the case, if everybody named themselves, man, everybody would be a king. everybody would be a king. Everybody would be a god, a king, and all kinds of things, you know. But it's not like that at all. And that's one of the checks and balances of the systems, is that you don't name yourself in that sense, because in one sense, like I said earlier when I was addressing what the sister Lisa asked me, in one sense you do name yourself, but I try to explain it that you're not actually naming yourself. You're actually expressing your natural attributes, and those attributes are captured in a picture that we call a name. It becomes a word or a string of words that we call name. And that's your identity. So in that essence, you're naming yourself. But in the way that we understand it, nah, that should not happen. You should not name yourself at all, because what you'll end up doing is the same way as if two people get into an argument about the weather. Two people are inside, and then they walk outside. One person says it's cold outside. The other person says it's hot outside. And then, so they're saying two different things. So which one is right? And so they'll argue back and forth. No, it's cold. No, it's hot. No, it's cold. No, it's hot. And they'll go back and forth. Why? Because they're using subjective language to express themselves. Now, that same scenario, if they walked outside and they used an objective way to explain to express each other, there'll be no argument and no question. All they got to do is say, hey, it's 73 degrees outside. And that ends the conversation, because now you have an objective way to express the weather or the temperature. You don't have to say, because see, hot and cold are subjective expressions. 73 degrees, if I say that, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, that's objective. And so your name is the same way. You have to have something outside of your subjective sphere and objectively name yourself. And that's what happens. And that's what happens. And that's how societies are organized, through objective expressions. And that's really what these deities serve as well. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the various different Neteru or Orisha or Abosom in Ghana, all these different deities of these different indigenous cultures, one of their aspects out of many is to organize the community, because they become the objective labels for different related things within the community. So, like, for example, if I say the Pasejet, which is a company of 9 deities in Kemet, if I label everybody in my kingdom, let's say I'm in control and I want to organize my kingdom, and I want to organize my kingdom socially, I will pick the company of 9 deities, and whatever those deities govern, those separate deities govern in terms of a person's behavior and personality, I will name everybody in my kingdom under one of those 9 deities. And by me doing so, I will be able to understand how that person behaves in a broad sense, a general sense. And we do this today in a sense with the zodiac. Like, if you're born, if you're an Aries or you're a Leo or whatever, people will have some kind of, or claim at least, to have some kind of idea about your personality and like, you know, how you are. Oh, Virgos, man, they're like this, they're like that. Oh, don't get with an Aries, because the Aries is like this and like that. You know, so they got 12 of these zodiacs to utilize to organize the social aspect of people, or the psychological, I should say, because it deals with your behavior and your personality. Well, in Africa, they do the same thing. You know, they either name you after a day of a week, like in a Khan tradition, or whatever. So it's always a psychological aspect to your name as well. But that's how they organize them. So I'm just saying that you can't go along naming yourself, because it'll break the system. And I'm trying to find this thing. I think I found one. Not the one I was looking for, but it's real small. I'm just trying to find a bigger one. But anybody has something? Oh, here, I think here we go, right here. I think I got one. I just want to. Oh, actually, this is not the one I'm looking for either. Yeah. Anybody else has something while I look for? I'm looking for.
Yeah, just off topic. It is on topic anyway, but while you're looking for that, I just wanted to note that I think I read an article at some point where there was a Brazilian couple who wanted to name wanted to register their baby with African names, and they were not allowed to do that because I guess they felt that the institution felt that it would be an embarrassment to the child, you know, and all of that. So sometimes it could cause difficulties in some places, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay. Anybody else? I'm still looking. I do want to share this because I want to show you. I'll probably be faster to look online. Or does anybody have the judgment scene of the Runu Peret Imheru of Annie? Because that's a popular one that everybody can find. I want to use that one. Yeah, it'll probably be faster than me to find it online. But yeah, any other questions in the chat, or anybody else got anything? I'm gonna tell you, see, we have a lot of work to do, and one thing that we cannot do is to keep going around in circles entertaining this same silliness. I'm just saying, we can't do that. We can't be comfortable doing that. We just can't. You know, there's too much work to be done. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking, never doing, never applying the information that we talk about. You know, in order to know truth, you have to live it. That's a real, you know, profound proverb. I don't know where it came from, but it's profound. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions while I look for this online. Where the next? Oh, when did the next beginners class? Yeah. Look, my name is Wujao on Facebook. If you are not my friend already, just send me a friend request or inbox me, because I noticed that Facebook, if you're not my friend and you inbox me, it actually sends your message to a totally new, different inbox. And I had no idea. I have like a whole bunch of messages sitting there that I never answered. I know people are looking at me like, man, you never address your messages, but I guess that's what Facebook does. But send me a friend request or send me a message to get in touch with me directly. But go to the website. The link is in the description of this video right now. And for the website, for the courses, metanetra.com. It's the second actual sentence under the description in here. But when is, I'm starting new classes all the time. I'm about to start one this week coming up. Today is Friday. This week coming up, I'm starting two classes actually. So class groups, I should say. They're all beginners level, but they're different class groups. And I put people together in a group based on their availability. So each session is 2 hours. So if you have free days and some free time, I try to match you up with another person who, you know, who wants to take the classes as well. And I try to form class groups based on that. So sign up and let me know what your availability is, and then I'll set a schedule. But I'm starting classes all the time. Starting next year, I'll be teaching the grammar. All right, so y'all be on the lookout for that. For those who are, you know, feel they're proficient on the beginners level and want to now deal with the grammar and everything like that. We're already, you know, beginning to have those kind of discussions already. Diamantaseti, I requested you a while ago. All right, I'll look out for you. Is that your same name on Facebook? Just let me know that.
Is that what you're looking for? What I'm sharing on my screen?
Oh, 1 second. Let me see what you got. Yes. All right, good. That's it right there. Can you make it bigger? Okay, one more. Okay, now if you could scroll up to show, yeah, there you go, right there. That's perfect. All right, so hopefully everybody could see that online. And dua for finding it. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. King Keto or Cito let me know that, yeah, I think I'm maxed out on my friends. All right, so just send me an inbox. Send me an inbox. Send me an inbox message, and I'll still get it, because I get it. It's just that I didn't know that they separated like that. But I'm only saying that to contact me directly. But you can go to the website and read about the course, sign up for it and everything, and email me. You can email as well, but you can contact me if you want, you know, direct communication, and I can tell you. But I start new classes all the time. I'm about to start 2 this week coming up. And you know, I'm looking forward to it, because I have a really good group of people, kind of a large group of people actually for one of the classes. And so, you know, you all will hear about it later on as well. So, okay, so let's deal with this.
Yeah, just quickly to add, if they can't message you, there's also the Facebook page, which is the Medunetra page, which they, you know, most people can also you know, hit the inbox on that one as well.
Oh, right. We need to add that to the description as well. Okay. Right.
So if you're listening, that would be facebook.com/the ancient Egyptian language. And I'll put that in the chat.
Okay. All right. So what you're looking at on the screen is the what's called the so-called the Book of the Dead of Ani. I believe this one is Ani. Yeah, this one is Ani. All right. So what I want to draw your attention to is what we were talking about earlier, because we were talking about name and identity and how you get your name and so on and so forth. Notice that when you are in this judgment scene, or this particular judgment scene, notice that you well, I don't have the cursor, so I don't know if you can follow what I'm saying, Emiket, but if you okay, yeah, you're already pointing to it. If you notice that you have right there in front, like go to where the glyphs are, right there to your right. No, where you were, to the right in front of that figure that you were on. Not Empu, the one on the other side of the scale. There was a figure where you were. No.
On the
Right
left
next
or
to
on the right?
On the left, right next to the scale. Right next to, yeah, there you go, right there, right next to the scale. All right. That those particular glyphs spell out a word, and that word is Shai. And I want everybody who's listening to look up this particular word, Shai. And it's yeah, you're highlighting it. Shai. And it's conventionally spelled S-H-A-I. Shai. Some people say Shay or Shai. And look that up. And what you're going to find is that the word itself means destiny or fortune. And so I want you to just understand that here it is, supposedly at a person's death, and they're being judged, but yet they have a word for destiny right here, and personified. Okay, now you're going to see two female figures on the left-hand side of the heart that's on the scale. Okay, and if you look above them, you'll see two names. You'll see the names of these two particular female figures. One of the names, which is on the right, is Renin Nunet. The word Renin Nunet has the word Ren in it for name. And I want you to look up that particular deity, Renin Nunet. All right. And you'll find out when you do reading about her, is that she is a birth goddess. She's the one who nurses the child and so on and so forth. She's responsible for and there at birth, and to kind of bring you, vitality by nursing you and so on and so forth. All right. But it ties into the word name. So here you have a deity, a female deity dealing with the name and nursing at birth, early stage, and you have Shai, which is dealing with fortune or the destiny of someone. And I just want to point that out because even in your judgment, that you have your destiny and your identity being shown or being expressed. And so this particular judgment, people believe that it only happens when a person dies. But I mean, it gets into another conversation, but if you think logically, a dead person will not need a papyrus to read or anything like that, because nobody is reading anything when you're dead. Nobody is doing any of this stuff while you're dead. These so-called books of the dead are things and rituals that people did while they were alive and did on a daily basis. And you hear some people mention that and talk about that. But my point for bringing this up is that what I mentioned earlier is that when you are given a name, one of your names should reflect the purpose and reason why you came into this existence. And so along your life path, your name is supposed to reflect your destiny. And so while you're living your life, you will always have something to judge yourself by, to see how far along you are in reaching your destiny or reaching your goal. And so this is a judgment scene. And on a daily basis, you can judge yourself based on where you are in comparison to your end game or your goal or your destiny. So these aspects and concepts are represented right here in the judgment scene, where your heart is weighed against the feather of truth. Now, this is not a literal heart being weighed, because we know a heart will actually always weigh more than a feather. But the heart is symbolic or metaphoric for the essence of you, your will, meaning your will were your choices and your behavior and how you conducted yourself, were they in line with that which is right, called ma'at. And so you're judging yourself, and then you're judging all of that in the path of what you're destined to be. So it ties into your name and to your destiny. So, and I'm just showing this, or going over this, just to try to connect it a little bit for you all, to let you know that there's more to it than this. Because like I said, I'm speaking in gist or in a summary, and not really going into too much depth about it. But maybe we'll do a show specifically about this, and we can actually talk, go into more about this, within 2 hours or something like that. So I just want to, to kind of show that. So yeah, dua for that. That's all. I just wanted to kind of show that for people to have something to tie into, that, we're not just sitting here being crazy. David Young. So next year for the grammar, approximate month. I plan on the beginning of the year, January. So hopefully, David, you're still there in January, after the book. And, I'm still busy dealing with the book, grammar book. One thing I could say now, and I think that everybody is actually seeing this and benefiting from it, is that when we talk about the Tep Hesab, the four different steps in transliterating and translating text, we talk about one of the 4 steps is the step 3, which is to do pattern recognition of glyphs. Step 2 is to identify each individual glyph, to know what they are and know what the possible, what they could possibly stand for and function as, right? That's for all of the individual glyphs. Step 3 is when you take the individual glyphs and you group them together in patterns to form words. And there's ways that you do that, right? But that process is the same process that we do on that level of words. We have to do the same process on a level of sentences. So on the level of words, we call that morphology. On the level of sentence, we will refer to that as syntax. So you have morphology and you have syntax. So on the level of the word, or the level of morphology, we will be taking individual glyphs and grouping them together to form words, the appropriate words that they are. On the sentence level, under syntax, we will have to group the combinations of words into syntactic units. And these units have patterns. And so you have to recognize these patterns to understand the sentences or what's going on, whether it's referring to an entity, whether it's referring to a property, or whether it's referring to a circumstance, or whether it's referring to a change or a state. And those 4 things that I mentioned would correspond to a noun. It will be an entity, a property would be an adjective, a circumstance would be an adverb, a change or a state would correspond to a verb. So you have these nominal sentences, adjectival sentences, adverbial sentences, and verbal sentences, and so on and so forth. So you have to recognize these patterns. So this is something that people are going to have to really, really strap in and get used to. So if you think that you were done on the beginner's level just identifying words, then no, we have a whole lot more work to do, and to understand, to be able to become proficient at. You should be able to look at a text, look at a sentence, like, for example, Emicat, if you don't mind, if you still have it available, the offering formula. Oh, you have that up still? Oh, so you came out of that. I don't know if you have the offering formula still available. If you do, if you can't pull that back up. But yeah, did anybody have something to say? Because you know, like I said, well, MC
Yeah, it's back
Iron
up.
never fails, never fails, never fails. Okay, so we have this offering formula back up. Okay, so there we go. We have it back up. All right, so we have the offering formula. Now, this is something that we always start off our session, our hangouts with, the offering formula. But I'm bringing this back up because you can actually utilize this and to see what I'm talking about when it comes to recognizing on a sentence level or syntax level of the patterns of groups of words. Whereas on the word level or the morphological level, that you have to recognize individual glyphs and group them into words. Okay, so you have individual glyphs that are grouped into words. Then you have strings of words that are, you recognize the patterns of those and group them together to form syntactic units. So like, for example, on the first line, just to give an example of the morphological level of identifying individual glyphs and grouping them into words. On the first line, you'll see the word jedu. Can you highlight the word jedu? Okay, so the boxes around the word jedu. Now there are things that will help us to determine that grouping of glyphs, one, should go together, and two, that it forms a word. And one of the major hints is because of what's called the determinative. That circle with the X in it is a determinative for a inhabitable city or location. And so we know this is the name of a city. And so we know that determinatives come at the end of words. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, they come at the end of words. And that's one major hint that, or tool, that we use to allow us to know where one word ends and another one begins. Another hint is the fact that we understand that all Rani Kemet, or most Rani Kemet substantives or nouns are either contain 2 consonants or 3. All right, that's just something that you just have to understand. All right, and you know, you'll come to know. So that's a word, jedu. And we could do the same thing again on the last word, abju, if you could box that one. So same thing. We see the determinative is ending the word, and then we have the glyphs before it that spell out or represent the word abju. And that's another city we know today as Abydos. All right, I don't know what the Arabic name is that people call it today, but you know it as Abydos or Abju. In ancient times, Abju. Okay, so that's an example of, on the morphological level, where we're identifying individual glyphs and grouping them together as patterns. So once you do this so much, you'll just be able to see words. It's like in English, you're able to just recognize words because you see the patterns of them. Even if the spaces were taken away from you, if you read a paragraph and the spaces were taken away, you could still read it if you are an English speaker and you grew up you know, being conditioned speaking English and reading English. All right, so now let's do the same thing on the syntactic level of syntactic units. So instead of looking at individual glyphs and those patterns, now we're going to look at patterns of full words. So the one that I'm going to just deal with for now is at the very okay, well, let's stay at the top line. The last word that we already discussed is abju. Then there's a word before that, neb. So if you could box both of those off. So this is a pattern that you'll come, once you start to learn the grammar and everything, and you execute these things that I'm saying, you'll be able to recognize this pattern that we have a word neb, which is a noun, and then it's right juxtaposed against another noun, abju, which is a city. So we have two nouns side by side, juxtaposed together. And we call this construction a genitive construction. And these are things that you'll be able to recognize once you put this into practice. You'll be able to understand that these are two nouns side by side. And a genitive construction express possession. So I know that the concept behind this pattern is possession, irregardless of the individual words themselves. So who is the possessor and what is being possessed? That's all I need to know now. So now I know it's Neb Abju. So it means owner or lord of Abju. So it's like saying Abju's lord or lord of Abju, the owner of Abju. Now I don't know who that's referring to, but I just know that that's what that's saying. You know, if I'm just looking at this, I can find out who it is by looking at some words right before it. And you can highlight the name of who all this is pertaining to, which is Wasir. If you box that, so we know this is Wasir. So the first line is Hotep di Nasu, and we skip that. We push that to the side, which deal with Wasir Neb Abju Necher A Neb. I'm sorry, Neb Jedu Necher A Neb Abju. And so we know that Wasir is a noun. Then we have Neb Jedu, which is the same exact pattern as the last one that I just mentioned, Neb Abju, the last pattern. So we have Neb Jedu matches the same pattern as Neb Abju on the end. Those are the same construction, different words, but same construction. So this is the pattern I'm talking about. So the pattern is a genitive. So I understand you got two nouns juxtaposed against each other, expressing the genitive. So that's a pattern. So I know that the first noun is going to be owned or by the second one. So it would be Jedu's lord or lord of Jedu. However you want to say it, you're saying the same thing. So anyway, I just wanted to just go over that and show people that this is the level of where we are going. I was wondering, why is there a T under Jedu?
Is it for the femininity ending for cities?
Yeah. Most, what I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were here, there T on Jedu or Jedut. Is this the name for Mendez? Jedu. Well, you got to understand this too, that most place names are feminine. And we also have to understand that all Rani Kemet or ancient Egyptian nouns are either masculine or feminine, and some of them can be both. So like, for example, the word Sen is brother, Senet is sister. So you have that word Sen, sibling, manifests itself as either masculine or feminine, but all of the nouns have to be one or the other. And some of them can be both, depending on the context. And it just so happens that place names, toponyms, are feminine. Most of them are feminine. Not all of them, but most of them are feminine, even in absence of the T, the bread loaf at the end. Like, for example, people may not know this, but Kush, the word cash, or people understand as Kush, is feminine, even though you don't have a T on there. So hopefully that's understood. The last word there, Abju, it doesn't have a T, but that's feminine. All right, so just keep that in mind. Were there any other questions that was in the chat? Okay, I was just wondering because I don't usually see it written that way, although I'm aware That most play names. Okay, yeah. Yeah, a lot of times the bread loaf is omitted in not just this word, but several words. You know, I'm sure you are already aware of that.
Yeah, we've seen also other examples with the offering formulas we've done on the Freestyle Fridays, where at the end of the word, if it pertains to a female, sometimes when you see the end of the word, like we have on the screen here, where we have Ma'at Hiru, sometimes it will still be like this without the T ending, but then we would be, you know, it is omitted, but we're aware that it would be Ma'at Hiru in that instance when it's referring to a female. So they do omit them in most cases.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it for me. You know, I'm looking at the chat, see if there's any questions. But listen, one thing I want to reiterate. Listen, I strongly recommend that, because we have so much work to do as a people, regardless of what you subscribe to, we have a lot of work to do, because I'm sure no matter what you subscribe to or the lack thereof, we all pretty much agree that you know, we're in bad shape as a people in terms of controlling our destiny as a people, you know, steering the, you know, being in the driver's seat. You know, we got things that are happening that are beyond our control, and it's very frustrating, and people you know, take out their frustrations in several different ways. You know, you got police brutality going on, you got, you know, all kinds of things. That's, you know, things that hit the news and hit social media faster than others, or whatever the case is. But we have a lot of work to do. So we don't have to be wasting time rehashing the same arguments over and over again. And so we should always be about the business of organizing truth, because we do understand one thing, that, and this is something that the brother Unk mentions, and I don't think people really realize how profound this statement is that a well-organized lie will defeat a disorganized truth every single time. And so that's a profound statement, because it's telling us the condition that we're in and what we have to do to change it. So the lies are well organized, and right now the truths are disorganized. So the lies are winning. It defeats the disorganized truth every time. So we should be about the business of organizing the truth if we ever stand a chance to combat the lies. So us getting into these redundant arguments is distracting us from organizing the truth. Because had we organized the truth, we wouldn't have to rehash the same old arguments. Like, for example, whenever somebody brings up to me about the hieroglyphs not being deciphered, I don't argue. I just tell them to get the book, our book. And whether I was involved with the book or not, I would still be recommending people to get a book, or, you know, any book that was done on it. Matter of fact, I put it on the screen right now. Book that's on the left, Has the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Writing System Been Deciphered? A Rebuttal to Walter Williams. That book, like, I don't have to waste time in going back and forth with anybody. Matter of fact, somebody as of yesterday commented on one of our videos, a new comment on our video, saying that the elder Walter Williams was right, and saying that the hieroglyphs have not been deciphered. And then he gave reasons, but the reasons he gave was the same reasons that Walter Williams gave, and the same reasons that we rebutted or refuted in the book. So I can tell that the brother did not read the book. So all I told him, I said, with all due respect, get the book and then come back and have a conversation. Don't try to pull the cart before the horse. Get the book. We already addressed that. And I'm not going to have a whole dialogue on a Facebook post or a YouTube comment section. That's why we organized the information in a book, because we can go into more detail in the book. We can put diagrams up in the book. You know, you can't do that on Facebook and on YouTube comments. People have to understand it's not a quick microwave thing. Sometimes we got to slow it down and really have a good in-depth conversation. We have to stop being shallow. Stop being scared of the deep end and dive into the deep waters. You know, sometimes we got to dive down a little bit. So I'm saying we have a lot of work to do. And these conversations that come up and pop up and stuff like that, I'm hearing things, and I'm like, man, we've dealt with that, you know, all, years ago. So anyway, but we have to organize the truth. So all these different debates and stuff, there's a lot of good stuff that come out of them. But if you're not in the business of organizing the truth, then you're actually becoming an enabler. You are helping our detriment, even with the good information, because if you don't organize it to where it impacts and has an effect on things, then you're pretty much just spinning your wheels and wasting time. And that's what we don't have. We don't have time. None of us are getting any younger, and we want to do things for the next generations. Otherwise, we're just going to do what we do. The next generation is going to end up being where we are. They're going to do the same thing over and over again. That's why we don't get anywhere. Our progress is slow because we don't organize the truth. We got to create institutions and things. So anyway, last thing I want to say, though, any of you all who are interested in learning the language, look, I'm forming classes all the time. You don't even have to take it from me, but learn the language. I offer the class. It's 12 weeks, 2 hours per week. It's 2-hour sessions, 1 session per week for 12 weeks. And I guarantee you, after 12 weeks, you will have the knowledge and the tools and know what to do with those tools in order to transliterate and translate basic inscriptions. I guarantee you this. Everybody that's ever taken my class has this ability, and I give certificates out to those people who do it. The class is only $100 and is live interaction. Like I'm there, right there with you, explaining things, answering questions. All right. So there's, to leave no room for, excuses or anything like that. Classes are $100, 12 weeks. All right. And that's only because I space it out for, 1 session per week. If it's possible to double up, then it will be 6 weeks, obviously, doing the math. But that's that. And beginning of next year, I'll start doing the grammar course once I complete the textbook, because I'm operating out of a textbook. The book that you see on the right hand side is the textbook used for the beginners class, study class, and the grammar book will be published soon, hopefully by the end of this year, and I'll begin the classes the beginning of next year. That's for the next level, and you have to have a competency on the beginner's level before trying to take the next, the grammar. All right. And like I said, you don't necessarily have had to have taken my beginner's class, but you have to have beginner's proficiency if you want to enroll into the grammar. All right. And in that situation, I'll just give a placement test just to see where you are, just so I'll know and that you'll know. So you'll be tested, and then you can enroll and things like that. So but the details will be coming up. But am I missing any questions? I want to say, Hotep, shout out to everybody who tuned in. I see we have Garfield, Dagger Squad, Monica, Brother David, who's popped in. Yeah, and the Brother Garfield, matter of fact, Dagger Squad, they be putting out a lot of information. Brother Garfield himself. I know he has a team, but just himself put out a lot of information. Man, that's a lot of work. Got to organize the truth. Got to start writing, organizing it into books. Otherwise, man, you're gonna be arguing with the same people about the same arguments over and over and over again. I know the Brother Garfield deals with Hebrews, a lot, Hebrew Israelites, and Sumer and basically Levant, Middle East information is coming out of there a lot, especially coming out of the Bible, the Old Testament, and stuff like that. But I'm sure Garfield know what I'm talking about. I'm sure he find himself repeating himself, saying the same things over and over again. And I know that presentations and PowerPoints helps to organize the information. But hey, let's take it all to the next level. Put it in the book. Put it inside books. Anyway, that's it for me. So anybody else got something to say? The floor is yours. we can close out.
Then.
All right. We are not like Africans who live in Africa. I know this statement will pass some off, but we'll need to be up to date. All right. I'm just trying to follow the conversation. See, we got brother Bud. Bud is an old time hangout buddy. You know, he used to hang out some years back when I used to go into the off the air hangouts back in the day. But even with that, see, that's what I'm saying. And I'm sure Bud can probably attest to this, and Garfield, because Garfield goes back then too. You know, years ago, I was in hangouts where people were arguing the same stuff that we're seeing on these major platforms now. Like a lot of stuff that's coming out on Soneta's platform or the House of Consciousness. These are things that was discussed years ago in hangouts already. And so, you know, so from my perspective, this stuff is being repeated over and over again, over and over and over and over and over again, you know? So, man, so let's put in the work. Let's organize the truth so we don't have to keep doing that. You know? Wajao, do you think we African Americans should learn this language to use in everyday life, or is the use for it just to learn the perspective of the past that can benefit the people now? I would say both. Because if you want an example, just look at what the Jews did with Hebrew. Look at what they did with Hebrew, and study that. Study how they did it, why they did it, and the benefits of them doing it. And then you'll see the what, the how, and the why that it can apply to us when it comes to Rani Kemet and Sesh Medu Neter, which will be our classical African language. So I would say both, yes to both. But like I said earlier, though, with the sister who wanted to hear, who is seeking, you know, looking to hear a full conversation in Rani Kemet, we have to remember that the lexicon of Rani Kemet, because it is a dead language, which is not, it doesn't mean it's extinct, it's dead. So the lexicon, the inventory of vocabulary is not up to date. So so if you could hear a conversation in Rani Kemet right now, we would be talking about old things. We couldn't talk about things, you know, that we would normally talk about now. You know, social media stuff, cell phone stuff, cars, and you know, all the things that's you know, embedded in our vocabulary now. That's a result of modern technology, modern concepts, and modern knowledge. You know, we actually know things that the ancient peoples did not know, you know, and there are some things that they knew that we don't know because it was lost, or it's not of high value, so we just don't pursue it, you know. So anyway, all right, that's me. So Emmy Cat, I guess if nothing else from anybody else, Juhudi Mott, you got anything else? I know I saw Juhudi Mott on earlier too. He was you know, updating the people on the name of the Egyptians themselves, the language, the writing system, and all that good stuff. How about you, Sean? No, Sean stays in these conversations. I know Sean knows what's going on. I bet you Sean right now knows who's arguing what. Bet right now. Sean, what's the latest argument right now? Yep. You laughing because I bet you could tell me. Go ahead, I'm waiting.
You already know, man.
What's the latest argument?
Did the ancient remnants travel to the Americas by boat? Do we have evidence?
Oh man, okay. Well, hey man, good luck with that. Ancient remnants travel to America. Wow. Yeah, so
People have a lot of time on their hands.
yeah, it's crazy. We really got to get on the ball though as a people, boy. I'm telling you, we have access. Everybody looks at Egypt as this wonderful, great civilization. Like everybody on the planet does. It's just that some people use that to their advantage, and some people spook it out and romanticize it, and then some people just ignore it and try to discourage other people from dealing with it. So we're messed up all the way around the board. So, you know, we come along and say, hey, let's embrace it. Let's learn it, learn the language, because the only way you're going to have access to the psychology of the people to understand how they develop their genius to become so great is by way of their language. A language is like a magnetic recorder. It records the psychology of the people. Language is the medium of the culture. That's why we say it's the DNA of the culture. If you deal with the language, you know the instructions that it would take to rebuild or revisit or reconstruct the culture. That's what DNA does biologically. So the language is the DNA of the culture. You know, that's the only way we'll be able to get back to that. And we have to understand the genius. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in crumbled up monuments. You know, we want to know what was going on in the minds of the people who created the monuments. Why were the monuments done? How did they become so great and organized? You got to think about it, man. I think people are sleeping on Kemet so much. You got to think about it. 4,000 miles of territory, give or take. Let's just say 3,500 to be on the lower range. 3,500 miles of territory that had a whole lot of people all along that territory that were organized under one polity called Kemet, unified. Several different communities that the Greeks called nomes, that the ancient Remish themselves called sapat. These different sapat, several different or sapawit, plural, came together and agreed to be unified under two major domains, Ta Shema'u and Ta Mehu, who then unified under one large domain called Sema Tawi. And by the 11th dynasty was called Kemet. So we have this kingdom called Kemet where everybody was unified. Back in the day where communication was, man, you couldn't communicate like now. We can't even unify, and we got access to each other in real time. Like I can text somebody right now and they can respond right now. We can't even be on the same page right now with that. Imagine back then when it took months just to send a letter upstream, downstream, whatever. But anyway, all right. So I'm hand the mic on over to Emicat or anybody else, and take us.
Hold on, I got a question. Was Kemet, were the Remish more spiritual or more scientific?
That's a trick question because they didn't separate the two. Because, you know, what people mean by spiritual, they are making it something different than scientific. And it just wasn't like that. See, religion, i.e. spiritual stuff, and science and scientific stuff were part of the same thing. Back then, it was part of the same thing. So there would be no case of being more of one or the other. It just wasn't that way. It's not until now that we do that. Like they separate church from state and do all those kinds of things.
It makes perfect sense because we do separate it, and we do ourselves a disservice when we start trying to separate it.
Right. And we have to understand what science is. Science is something that you do, and spirituality or religion, our ideas of religion, is something that you that you remember in a lot of different African communities, during your lifetime, you're going through three major stages that were acknowledged by a lot of these different communities. When you're born as a wild animal. And people may take offense to that, but you just got to get over it, because we are animals. And all an animal means is that we are animated, meaning that we have the ability to move on our own, which is different from plants. This is why in biological taxonomy, they label plants the plant kingdom and the animals the animal kingdom. The major difference of why they do that is because plants cannot move on their own. They're stuck in the ground, or they have roots, or whatever the case is. They move based on external forces of the wind and so on and so forth. Whereas animals, which are humans are included, we are able to move, and we're able to be mobile on our own volition, our own accord. Okay, so you're born as a baby as a wild animal, and so during your early stages of life, your parents are domesticating you like they would an animal. Our idea of an animal, they're domesticating you. We just name it different things because of our ego. I mean, because we don't want to see ourselves as animal creatures out there in the wild, out there in nature. We want to see ourselves as something different. So we have these different words for it. But I'm just going to tell you that you're born a wild animal. You're domesticated by your parents and your teachers and your aunts and your uncles throughout your teenage years, all the way up to whatever you become an adult. And then you become a domesticated animal called a human. And then once you move from there, as you advance in your ages and you gain experience and stuff, now you become divine. So you start off as a wild animal, then you become a human, a domesticated animal, which is a human, then you become a divine being. So at the core of everybody's lifespan is this process of becoming divine. That's what people are calling spirituality or religion. So when it comes to science, science is something that you do. Science is something that you investigate. You create questions and you investigate using a proper methodology to know when you know something. That's what the word science means, to know. So the methods in science are tools that allow us to know when something's known. That's all that is. But in our lifetimes, we are striving to move away from being wild, rough around the edges, untamed, undomesticated, to become domesticated, then become divine, to become a vessel so that the divine can have experience through us. That's what we're doing. So there was no separation between all of that stuff. It was all a part of the one big process. People have to understand that. But a lot of these communities are based on those three major points in your life. You're born wild. And like I said, a lot of these questions and my responses to them are I'm being brief, because actually I'm trying to get off here now, but I'm being brief. But we, some of these questions deserve a full discussion about, and spirituality is one of them, because spirit, when it all said and done, spirit is nothing more than energy. I won't say nothing more, but spirit is energy. And every single thing in the universe that does something takes energy to do so. So remember this: doing, DOING, doing takes energy. And energy everywhere is governed by law. Hence, we start to get into the word ma'at, law, that foundational principle that permeates throughout the entire existence, in which these divine principles stand upon. So you'll see the ma'at or ma'at pestle, the pedestal and things where these deities are standing on sometimes, where these different principles have to stand on this guiding principle of law that governs all energy in different ways, of course. But is still there. So all this stuff, this stuff, you know, the whole thing about spiritual versus science and religion versus science, that's what we do today. That's how we could talk about it today. Back then, you know, if you go back in a time machine and you were speaking the language of the people that you run into and you were trying to share these same concepts, they would look at you like you're crazy. Anyway, that's it for me though. So anybody else have anything? Amy, can I turn it over to you?
All right, Dua. So yeah, we'll just close out. But that was a very interesting conversation. So Dua, to the panel and to those on the chat who engaged in the conversation. And yeah, just to remind y'all, you know, for those who haven't you know, joined our group page, you know, just I think the link for the group page, Facebook group page, is below the video description section. And you know, also on the official webpage, that's medunurture.com. I think you see that on your screen. You know, we also have membership, and you know, feel free to join this free membership. There's also paid membership, which also has its benefits, but free membership, you can get a lot of different resources. So feel free to join that as well, and get the books that you're looking at on your screen. For those who want to, you know, understand the decipherment a little bit better, you know, that's the book on your left side of the screen, and you can get that on the webpage, medunurture.com, which is mdw-ntr.com, or you can get it on Amazon. And the beginner's book for those who want to, you know, learn a little bit about the you know, such Medunurture, and probably even start the classes as well. It's also the book, you can actually use it for self-study, but there's also interactive classes, and all the information are on the web page. But you can get the book as well on Amazon and also on the web page. And with that, I'd just like to say dua for tuning in, and hopefully we see you again next week. And with that, I'd like to just say Shema Motep.